各位亲爱的网友朋友，大家好。
Hello everyone.
今天呢，咱们这个话题是听起来有点神秘。
Today the topic we discuss sounds a little bit secretive. What does it mean by food gifted by the god? So we have different type of fruits on the table. There's strawberries, there's pumpkins, there's grapes. Well, I'm also curious what exactly is special food gifted by the god. I'm actually very surprised. Have you heard of Elon Musk? He has the intentions for people to migrate to Mars. Well, I wonder if people go there, what do they eat? It is not because I love to eat. It is just that human beings need food to survive. So if you were to migrate to Mars, you have different atmospheric air, and I don't think there is actually vegetables or food there. So what can you eat? So today, what we talk about, it is also linked to this. That's something that we can eat in Mars. Yes, actually, there are research in this aspect, and potentially, this food can be brought to Mars or even to outer space. So this food can be planted in outer space. So what exactly is this food? I think this food is amazing. And what is amazing is that it is actually very ordinary. And it saved mankind several times. Don't forget, it is a type of food. And humans require food. If you look at ancient time, let's say 100 years, within the last 100 years, there are famines, there are war, and we have reduced productions of food. And as a result, people would lose their life because they lack food. And in fact, in times of wars, in times of famine, you have difficulties. If you look at the history, that's about 4 to 5 times every 100 years, there will be a major disaster. So with the advancements of technology and with the food management, say for example, if it doesn't rain, there is also some way to irrigate the crops. But in ancient times, if the irrigation system is not proper or not adequate, it's very difficult to manage because they need to rely heavily on the weather. So why do I say that this food is gifted by the gods? Because it can grow anywhere. And even in barren soil, it's able to survive. It has high survival rate. Even in grounds where it's not easy to grow crops, it can even withstand high altitude cold areas. As long as if the place is not freezing cold, it can still grow there, or even if the soil is extremely dry. The whole world, in the tropical areas, you tend to have there are more rivers, so there are easily supply of water, so irrigation is not a problem. But imagine it's at those high altitude locations. So in fact, a lot of slopes in the northern hemisphere, you see that it's very dried and there's not enough plants, no grass, very dry. And this type of food can grow in this area too. So if, for example, in China, in Shanxi, in Ganshu, or even part of Qinghai, you have some of these Great Plains that has that tends to be very dry and lack water for irrigation. So there are not many crops that can grow there. But this food can be grown there. So, Master, what exactly is this? So, what exactly is this miraculous food? Hold on to the table. I'm going to disclose this food. And it's the potato. Oh, so it's potato. Look at this. It's very, very colorful, diverse in color. So it is gift by God. This is so ordinary and understated. I thought it's some special food, Master. You can even bring this food to Mass? It's so ordinary. So we can share with our friends what's so special about these ordinary potatoes. So, where's potatoes originate? Actually, globally, the potatoes originate from Andes Mountains in South America, in Peru. Yes, it's very close to Machu Picchu in Peru. So it has about 10,000 years of history. In its place of origin, this is called Mamajasha because it means the mother of growth. This name creates so much warmth. The most authoritative institutions in the world for studying potatoes is the International Potato Center. And they have the institution, the Genes Bank, has over 8,000 potatoes varieties. And of this, there are over 4,000 native potatoes varieties. There is no genetic modifications, but there are over 4,000 native potatoes varieties. That's a lot. And they vary in size and shapes. So if you look at the pictures, that's Peru's potatoes. And they have up to 4,000 different colors and shapes. They have purples to pink to blue to red and very colorful potatoes. And in average families in the central mountains of Peru, they plant up to 100 different potatoes varieties. For them, the potatoes culture is very important. They can also gift potatoes. They also found a method that you can preserve potatoes for very long periods. So what about the Inca? What do they do? How do they store potatoes? The Inca people are also very smart. They also invented a method of making freeze-dried potatoes. So, frost-resistant potatoes varieties, they were spread on the Andes highland soil subjected to freezing temperatures at night for 5 consecutive days and the sun exposure during the day, forming a hard and dry state, preserving up to 15 years. So this is very easy for them to store. So it requires 5 consecutive days of sun exposure during the day and then freezing, using the freezing temperature at night to store the potatoes. And once they achieve the hard and dry state, the potatoes can be preserved for up to 15 years. That's a great way to store food. So during the years of famine, the freeze-dried potatoes, it became life-saving provisions. And they are still widely sold in the market in Peru in these days. So it's called chunos. So, are there other, besides just providing food, what other use are potatoes? So, the Inca people use it for medicinal values. Apparently, it helps with ailments from skin infections to headaches. So, it's a miracle fruit. So, the Inca people fermented the potatoes in water and producing a viscous potato slurry, and they use this and serve as a natural antibiotics due to the penicillins produced during the fermentations. So this is a natural antibiotics, and they use it to treat altitude sickness, colds, even pneumonias and gastric ulcers. So, is there a national day for potatoes? Yes, in fact, in Peru, they celebrate the National Potato Days every year on May 30th. So the Inca people believe that the potatoes is a gift from God to protect them, and that's why they even celebrate National Potato Days. So I have a question. How come there are so many native potatoes varieties? Why do they need such varieties? Is that a question? Well, I think our online friends have similar questions as well. Well, majority of the food that we have, there are like few, 3, 4 types. I remember there's a red skin potatoes, and there are some that colors is very close to the soil. And there's also yellowish white color potatoes. So if you go to the supermarket, typically you can find 3 to 4 generic, very common potatoes. So I'm going to disclose the code, the secret code of God. Well, it is to research how to survive in various environments, and in the process of the research, they hope that certain potatoes may be more suitable in some dry locations that has lack of water. Do you believe that in very dry lands, those soil is so dry that it becomes like sand? In your life, have you ever seen that some food can still grow in very dry land? I think we have cactus. Actually, in Vancouver centers, we have some plants as well, some varieties plants as well. Some, they can adapt to dry weather. So in Vancouver market, there's a certain type of orchid flowers during the Chinese Lunar New Year period. I bought a pot. After 1 month, I didn't even give water to it. I touched the soil, and it's so dried, but it still withstands the dryness. So for potatoes, some varieties of potatoes, they are able to withstand very, very dry seasons. So these medicinal properties of potatoes is God-given. So why they have so many varieties is for research. So are the medicinal properties of potatoes God-given? Actually, when God created all goods or food, it has a secret code and a purpose. So potatoes, for example, we look at it from the perspective of usefulness. Most people, when they consume potatoes, they do not have any allergic reactions. It is a very ordinary common food. So,
有一部分有少数人对这个麦麸皮哈，或者是面筋有一些过敏反应。
some people are allergic to gluten.
他受不了，他也吃不了。但是呢，土豆没问题。
But potatoes, people have no problems.
用于医药制造。
They can use it. In fact, some of the tablets, they use their starch. They use potato starch because it's easily adaptable. And I believe that some of its medicinal properties of potatoes is actually God-given.
这个我觉得应该还有类似青霉素的一个作用，你记得我说了吗？
Remember the last time when we look at it, I feel that it has penicillin's properties or natural antibiotics. That's what I feel. And I know what I say, I may be scolded, but I think that there are some values that is bestowed by God to the food. And some old folks shared with me some special methods which I'll share with you later. But these medicinal properties are all God-given. So now we know the history of potatoes. It originates from Peru, and it has huge varieties. But what about the contributions of potatoes to the world? So, in the early 16th centuries, the Spanish conqueror discovered potatoes while conquering the Inca Empire, and they brought them back to Europe. So, upon the arrival, the advantages of potato was not yet known to the Europeans, but due to their unattractive appearance, they actually faced discriminations. So, to the Europeans, nobilities, they were seen as food. They are still very unattractive, but they find that the flowers is very beautiful. The potato flowers is beautiful. So they treat the potatoes as a type of beauty plant. So for the people, they believe that potatoes, because it grew underground, is associated with dark witchcraft and the devil, and considered as evil. So in the 17th centuries, in Ireland, there are actually religious war during that period. So as a result, because the focus was actually on the war, the grain harvests were poor and the food was scarce. And they found that potatoes is very good for survival, becomes very valuable. They are actually buried underground, and they could be dug up and eaten as needed, and the rest can be left in the ground relatively safe. So they find that potatoes becomes valuable, and they'll be able to feed a family easily. So it helped the Ireland. And as a result, the human populations in Ireland expanded quickly. So there's an increase in populations in Ireland after they introduced potatoes to Ireland. Well, there's a saying that if a family, if there are 8 people, and if they have 1 acre of land, and if they have a cow, they will be able to live comfortably. And during that time, there was also a lot of war in Europe. So it was being transported from one nation to another nation. So in the 1740s, the kingdoms of Prussia They faced famines, and as a result, millions of people died of starvation. The king at the time, he saw the nutritional richness and high yield of potatoes as advantageous and wanted to promote them on a large scale nationwide. However, the farmers were not receptive, and they still harbor bias against the dark potato. So the king came up with a solution. He had a potato experimental field opened in a suburb of Berlin, guarded heavily until the potatoes matured, and instructed soldiers to pretend not to see if anyone stole potatoes. The farmers were curious about the potatoes experimental field, thinking that what the king had in his land must be valuable. Some brave ones secretly dug up potatoes and brought them home. They tried planting potatoes, cooked and ate them when harvested, finding them delicious. So gradually more and more people started stealing and planting potatoes. So seeing the situation, the king was pleased and immediately issued a decree. And that everyone should understand the benefits of potatoes. And now let's bring back to modern Germany. We know that Germans love potatoes very much, with various potato products available in German supermarkets and many new potatoes innovations emerging. In one state of Germany, when young men and women are in love, they give each other a potato because to the locals, love is as precious as potatoes. So that's very important. So there's no need to give flowers like rose. You just give potatoes, and that's a very practical gift. I wonder what is that type, the varieties of potatoes for love. So let's talk about France after we talk about Germany. So we talk about the war in Europe, and there's a military doctor, and he was captivated by the Persians, and he ate potatoes every day, and he became very good. So upon returning home, he actively promoted the benefits of potatoes, because he himself benefited from potatoes while he was captured by. And he invited social elites to his potato feast, where various food were made from potatoes. Upon learning this, King Louis XVI ordered that potatoes be allowed into the palace for consumption. So between 1769 and 1770, France experienced severe famines, leaving many people facing hunger and starvation. So in this context, people begin to recognize the importance of potatoes, and they expanding their cultivation on a large scale, eating them, and have the nickname as underground apple. Because France was a major European power with very strong influence, they benefited a lot from potatoes, and they even have scholars that wrote books introducing potatoes. And women even decorate themselves with potato flowers at headwear, and the demand for potatoes increased significantly, and other European countries also follow suit, and they massively plant potatoes. So by the end of the 18th century, potato had become the main crops in European countries. So we know that in Romania, in Poland, they also consume a lot of potatoes. And they also cause, with the arrival of the potatoes in Europe, they also have an increase in the populations in Europe. Actually, Master, in China, when I was young, I remember I ate a lot of potatoes as well. How did spread to the culture of potatoes spread to China? I think the potatoes is not from South America to China. No, because during that period, there's no aircraft, there's no vessels. So I believe it's due to trade relations from Europe, and it's not direct from Europe. It's a little bit like a relay, like in Britain, in France, they like it and they find it's very good. So of course there's a lot of trade relations, and they'll start to sell to the next country, and they'll move towards Europe, Central Europe. Maybe they spread to Italy, and the Italian people use it and find that it's good, and then they spread further and spread towards the east, and it will move to Turkey, to the Middle East, and that's how eventually it moves or it spread it comes to China. I read that in Shanxi there's a Qing merchants. They need to do a lot of trades, and they move from the northwestern part, and they move as well. Yes, so if you look at the Xinjiang, the Shanxi, the Qinghai, the areas, they have very developed cultivations of potatoes. In those locations, it's not easy to produce some crops because of the weather. But for potatoes, it is okay because it doesn't need a lot of water and it can withstand very cold weather. So it is like a relay that is eventually it came to China. So we know that the productions of potatoes is very high. In 1 acre, if you have millet, you have different types of grains, the different type of other crops, the production level is low. But for potatoes, the production tends to be 4 to 5 times of other crops. So the yield per area of the world major crops, you can see that potato is ranked very high. So if you have not enough food, you just need to treat it as the main meal and you will feel full. Actually, for majority of people, if you're hungry, you just eat an apple. You find that it doesn't fill your tummy. But potato can be interchanged with rice as well, and it has very high nutritional value as well. So you just need to consume 1 potato. That pretty much can ensure that you can fill your stomach, and as a result, the populations increased. So, Master, when potato was introduced to China, how did it get accepted? So in the northern part, they have sorghums, but it is not so easily accepted to digestion. Actually, it's actually the horse is very suitable for that, because it has very high fiber content. The high fiber, you need it. You find that for the high fiber crops, they can use that to produce alcohol. Some of the northern part they can use to produce alcohol, but if you produce potatoes, it's different. So in Europe, we thought that is it because it's being pushed or it's being promoted by the emperor? Because we know that the European kings promote potatoes. What about China? China is bigger. So in Qinghai, in Gansu region, it's too far and it's difficult for the emperor to manage. So they just want to make sure that they produce crops that can help them to survive. It doesn't matter what crops, as long as they do not plant poisonous crops. So in the south, you have Guangzhou. So it's come from the sea. And you have like from Vietnam, you have Fujian province. So you actually enter China, mainland China, through the sea. And it's also like the northwestern part. It's a little bit like the Silk Road. So we have the silk, we have porcelains, we have daily products, we have tea. So that's the export. So what about the import? I believe that it's also what is important is potato seedlings. They also have chilies. They will have peanuts. They also have sweet corns, carrots. Actually, I think that sweet corn is also originates from South America. So they are from the same place? Yes, they are from South America and they have high yield crops. So during that period, you have sweet potatoes, you have potatoes. I think maybe carrots is not from South America, most likely from Europe. So during the Ming Dynasty, the late Ming dynasties, we have a lot of these new crops entering China, introduced to China. I read somewhere that during that time, only the royal families can consume this. So there's a record that says that during the 15 days of the lunar month, they have some special carnivals, and that is a time that you have a lot of European special and unique products is introduced to the people, to the populations. Yes, there is a cycle from introductions to gaining popularities. Well, why is it that they are afraid of new products? That's because they have not tried before. It's a new introductions. But I believe that the government also has a lot of effort to promote it, because ancient China was an agricultural society, and with the populations and land at the core of agriculture. So there is actually management of it, of population and land. They have to take care to ensure that the populations have adequate food. If there is lack of food, what's going to happen? They will have unrest. And that's why the central government put a lot of emphasis on what the farmer plants. And if the crops prove to be good, then the central government will push for those crops. There is studies about the populations, and that's quite easy to find. During the Northern Song Dynasty to the early Qing Dynasty, so the population exceeded 100 millions, approaching the historical peak. And that was the time before potatoes was introduced to China. And after potatoes was introduced to China, suddenly there was a significant increase in populations. And during the Qianlong reign, the populations becomes like 200 million during the Qianlong. And during the Daoguang era, that's about 20 years later, it surpassed 400 millions. That's the populations. Can you imagine? The populations doubled. So because for the central government, the main concern is whether the people have adequate food to eat. Let's try to analyze this economically. If the people need to have productions and the governments need to they have to collect tax, and then they need to have productivities. They need to have populations. After Second World War, all governments will encourage people to give birth, and that's why there was a period of baby boom. In fact, in some parts of the world, even in Canada, even in America, they will encourage them to have more kids. The government will encourage more kids. I remember when I first moved to Canada, if you don't have enough, if you don't have very high salaries, the government will subsidize the parents with new babies. It's quite effective. Can you imagine if it's 60 years ago? The mom don't even have to work. The mom just need to keep giving birth and they can live a comfortable life. The government will provide subsidies to help to raise the kids. And that's why there's a period of baby boomer. And that's why the populations increase exponentially. So if you look at the history of China, towards the later parts of the Qing dynasties, after the introductions of this food, you can see the end of Ming to the end of Qing. That's an exponential growth, population growth. And now the China population has increased significantly. We think that the population's growth in China has a direct relationship with the introductions of potatoes and sweet corn. So within the 100 years, becomes very popular and very common crops. And that's why the population in Europe, the populations in China grow significantly. And without considering the factors, I think got to do with the introductions of potatoes to Europe as well as China. So a lot of times we need to have some statistical figures to support it. So the question is it good to have huge population growth? Well, during the period of war, you need to have a lot of people in order to fight the enemy. So every country has the same way to motivate people to join the military during the war period. But then we have the problem. If you look at the world, majority is actually water. Less than 30% is land. And out of this, you have high mountainous area. So probably it's left about 10% that's suitable for human habitations. So in the 1800s period, there is a growth in population growth in Europe. And similarly during that period, China also experienced huge population growth. Well, if you think about it, if you are a family, you have more children, 60 years ago, your grandparents' generations, if let's say you have parents has 10 acres of land, and if they keep having children, let's say the parents had 8 children, 4 sons and 4 daughters, let's say. The 4 daughters married, so they will not enjoy any inheritance, but there are 4 sons. So the 4 sons, they got married and divide the land equally. So that's something that they divide. It's always the land first, the division of land first, followed by house. Because they need the land for survival. So out of 10, because you have the parents and 4 sons, so you split. So every family, they had 2 acres. So now you have 4 sons and they have wives, and each one of them have 8 children. So out of the 2 acres of land, you have 10 people in each family. So look at this. It wasn't enough. In the past, the crops, the grains that you produce, you won't have a lot of crops. That amount can only feed 2 persons. So how do they ensure everyone have adequate food? Imagine that now you have 10 persons in the family. So with the population growth, here comes the problems as well. Because there is no increase in land, there is no additional income. How do you ensure that this generation will be able to survive? So when you reach the 3rd generation, when there's a famine, so at the grandparents' generations, they have a few children, and they are able to enjoy a comfortable life. But 40 years later, all of them don't have enough food because famine struck within 3 generations. So that's why when potatoes was introduced, you have population growth. Because the same acres of land, instead of just feeding 2 persons, it is able to feed 6 to 8 people, to 8 persons. It is high yield. So now they are able to produce more kids and to ensure that they produce enough food for them. Song Dynasty is a period of prosperity. So you can see that there is actually a cycle. So it's like within the 3 generations, there will have a famine and struck. So even potatoes is high production, high yield. It helps human beings to survive. So during the periods of lacking of food, can you imagine that you have 10 acres of land and you have 30 people? Can you ensure to feed everyone? Probably not. So when there's a lack of food, then the infant may actually die of hunger. When I was young, I was also malnutrition. But luckily for me, I had the opportunity to cultivate. And it was the cultivation that changed my life. So from a political and economic perspective, when the population increases a lot, it is good. But from a country perspective, can you imagine a country like America? Say, from 100 millions, it now becomes 300 millions. Or even to have 1 billion populations. How can you withstand? Because there is a limited resources, there's scarcity of resources. So it may not be a good thing as well for the nations. So I think there's also another positive contributions of potatoes, and that happens during the Second World War. I remember that we say that the American soldiers were very good. They have very sumptuous food during the war period. I heard that they had a lot of potato biscuits, and they also have spanned meat. And why the Americans able to do so well? And because of the food that they produce and give to their military men. Because the American soldiers, they mainly relied on two types of food on the battlefield, the military compressed biscuits and spam meat. So the main ingredients in both of these foods, they were potato flour. And even the supreme commander of the Allied force, General Eisenhower, he also said that over the past 4 years, the spam and the compressed biscuit have helped us win the war. Yes, indeed, how can you expect the soldiers will be able to fight if they suffer hunger? So Master says that potatoes is one of the most versatile crops in the world. It is cold resistant, drought resistant, and is tolerant of poor soil. Even in Qinghai, it is very bad quality soil. But potato is able to grow well, even in remote, high-altitude, harsh climates. So we talk about the growth of potatoes. So they plant with seeds. So they will press the seed into the ground. Well, we talk about potatoes have flowers, and it's beautiful flowers.
也是结籽儿，咱们种的种子呀，还是种什么呀？
土豆是有果实长种子的。
对。
但是，真正种土豆，是用土豆本身来种。
Actually,
土豆长土豆得土豆，因果关系啊，这是。
Actually.
它就是用这个土豆哈，比如说你在暖和的屋里放一放，也就是土豆这样说，土豆从那个土地下头成熟之后挖出来。
So potatoes, when it's ripe, you dig out from the land.
它3个月就自我保护。
After 3 months, it will protect itself.
这个时候只留着吃就完了。但是过了这3个月
But after 3 months,
如果给它一点温暖的话
if it has some warmth, it starts to grow.
经常以前小的时候是我。 冬天的秋天入冬的时候不就储存那个冬天的
So it is not propagated through seeds, but through other parts of the plants, like the stems, like the roots, or the leaves. So what you do is that once you start to have all these sprouted potatoes, you just plant this. A new one will grow, and that's why there's this saying that plant potatoes, get potatoes. Let's say 1 potatoes. You can see that there are many points, and those are the places that they can sprout. We talk about this Buddha's eyes at our finger. So it is similar. So these are also the points for them to grow, to sprout. This is what the ancient farmers reach these conclusions. So what they do is that they can see that and they cut it. And they use this part to plant, and it will grow by itself. So 1 potatoes you can split into 4 or 5 sections, and you plant to 4 different 5 parts, and you will be able to have 3 plants. So if you look at it, they have many points, 10 over points, and it can grow to 10 over potato plants. So in a very small location, although it has a restricted land, you'll be able to grow.
小鸭蛋，不是小鸟蛋，鸽子蛋那么大。
So the size is like a crow egg size. You just need that for it to grow.
切这块儿，把它分别种出去之后，就是长成4、5大颗土豆，长得个儿又大又好。
And you will grow well. And that's how it can
土
grow.
豆跟那个蚯蚓有点像。
Why is it that
蚯蚓，比如说万
I
一
feel that
不小心
potatoes is lived by earthworms? Because why is it so? Because for earthworms, when you cut into half, it will grow.
长出来，这土豆也是都不用
And
种子，不用说
potatoes is the
开花还有
same.
蜜蜂
You
给它
don't
什么
need to
什么
have
什么
like
的哈
it can't.
它自己就
You
长
don't need to have pollinations, and it can grow by itself.
它我是说神哈，
It is
给
asexual
我们人
reproductions.
类的一个重要的
So this
食
is
物
a
啊
very important
它
food
是
gifted
叫
by the
做无性
gods.
繁殖。
无性繁殖，就不用
So
男女配对。
the reproductions of potatoes is asexual reproductions,
就灌木丛哈，树
which
木当
means
中
the
哪一
new
个木头
individuals
其实
can
它里
be
头有
propagated
其
not
实
through
懂的
seeds,
人
but through
你像
other
种
parts
植物
of
的
the
人他就懂
plants,
得说这个，比如说这个
like stems, like roots,
这
like
是母
leaves.
松树，这是公松树，它分这个分
So
男子
for most plants, you have the female plants and the male plants. So it's quite common in the nature world.
啊，它为什么开花呢？
So why is it that the
有的
flowers
是通
will
过
have
风吹，比如说我这
why
里
is it that the
一朵
plants
花
will have
它
flowers?
就带着
Because
花
they have
放在
pollens,
那大风
and
一
they
吹过
need.
来
So when the
它吹
wind
着那个
blows,
花上去了，
是，
它这个
it
过程
may
叫
have
授粉
cross
授粉呢
pollinations,
它也长成果实，
and that's a
果实
way
里面那个
of
籽呢又可以来种
ensuring continued reproductions of
这是多数的
plants.
植物是
So
吧？
majority of the
多
plants
数植物都是这样，一定
is
你得
through
像这个
cross
男女
pollinations,
这个
and
结
there
婚
is
生
a
孩子是一
female
个道理。
parts and a
植物也
male
是如
parts
此
of the plants.
但是这
And
个
through
土豆
cross pollinations, they
人家
help
自
to
己
reproduce.
你给它切几块儿哈，不切块
But
儿哈不一
potatoes
样
is
继续
unique.
生长。
It is asexual
对
无
reproductions.
性繁殖，就
对
是自己，
它又
就能
超越了
造
这个
出自己。
过去地球上所有的东西，还有这个地球本身是由阴阳，阴阳
And
之
the
分
world we
啊，这
use
个
have
公
the
母
yin
男
and the
女雌
yang.
雄
They need
是这样。
a
这个
good
你
balance
自己
of
就可以
yin
再
and
生
yang.
哎，我
But
明
for
白了
potato
师傅
itself,
所以为什么
it's
说刚
able
才
to
它这个适应
reproduce.
性
The
特别
individuals
强
can be
有时候这个
propagated
地儿不寡妇
not through
或者
seeds,
或者没有
but
昆
through
虫
its
或者昆虫
own
很
parts
少
是
of the
对它
plants.
就不能够这个传送
授
花粉，
粉，
对
嗯，
对吧？所以
So
这
now I
个能
understand
够
why is
完
it
全
that
避开了这些
potatoes
条件，它
can't
都能够茁壮成长。
对
grow well
虽然没有
in
刺激
parts
和
of
鼓励
the
它自己
place
默
that
默地成
very
长
like it's very harsh climates
就有点
and
像
arid
就是人类
areas
就是
because
比
it
如说你
doesn't
拿
require
比如说
cross
拿个母羊是吧
pollinations. It
我
can
记
be
得
it
20
has
年
this
前
asexual
在澳
population
洲哈，哎，它就
reproductions.
对，在它这个身上取个细胞就克隆出，就慢慢出这个小羊就是它的本身的复
It's
制
a little bit like clone
其实如果以此
cloning.
类推的话，其实人本身也可以这样做的。
If you use
但
this
是这个
and
现在
we
一下这
think
个科技
further,
哈
maybe
进行普
humans
及
can
还
be
没有达
cloned
到
as
哈
well. But
哎，所以
with
在地球
current
上的这个
scientific
很多
technology
物种中
advancement,
很
we
少
have
有
not
单
reached
性
that
繁殖
stage
出来
yet.
对，
土豆
But in the
就是这
world,
么个东西
there are very few that's
所以呢，很
asexual
容易种植。
reproductions types.
哎
And because of these
所以它
properties,
从
potatoes is very
从
easy to
种啊
grow.
就简单，是不是啊？
对，
So the whole production cycle is simple. The whole management process
他们就是
is
说
easy.
偶尔农民去干嘛呢？就种了之后，看它长了一段
So
苗
all
出来之
the
后，
farmers need to do
经
is
常会它
to
往上
just go
往
and
上
check
填土推
on
土上去
the new
苗
crops.
儿又扎上根儿了，是吧？
是
哦
它是这样的，它就不断的，它长了那一窝土豆哈，它长了之后土地就变少了，那个土啊就
But
被
after
撑
the
开了
potato
所以一直
grow,
往上填土，它
it's
就长得就更多。
it will remove some of the soil surface. So what the farmers need to
能多
do
长2倍以上
is to constantly add
这
soil
是技巧
to the crops.
挺容易
其
的。
实在
area
家里阳台上也可以种，
Actually, you may be able to grow potatoes in your own balcony.
是
那刚才师傅也讲了，土豆的产量也是特别的高的，
对
啊，就是它就是这个。
So Master, you also mentioned that the yield
可能土豆
per unit
啊
areas
玉米啊
for potatoes
啊
is
或者
also
是
very
水稻
high.
就这4种嘛哈。
So the
对
four
我们查了一
major
下
crops
还
in
有
the
数
world
据
with
还
high
有这样
yield
比较的
is potatoes,
就是土豆
corn,
呢
rice,
一
and
亩
wheat.
哈能出1200公斤。
We
啊
had some
1200
research and we
公斤
find
那
that
说到玉米呢
for
它排第二
potatoes,
一亩是
it's
300
number
公斤
one,
才是它的
and
1/4呀。
it can produce 12,000 kg per hectares. And the sweet corn is about 300 kg. And for rice is 280 kg. And for wheat is 200 kg.
嘛就促成了人口的增长。
So as a result, you have population growth.
厉害厉害。
So as you can see, potato yield are 4 times that of corns and rice and 6 times that of wheat.
到底吃什么？咱们现在就知道了，应该是土豆吧。
So now we know that potatoes is a food that we should consider.
新救援啊，那个电影当时还很火呢。
I saw a movie
人类去火星嘛哈。
对，那个人去火星，然后
about a person going to Mars.
人家来救要等好多天，他没
And he has no food. So what he did was to plant potatoes.
啊，种成了。
And he was successful in planting potatoes. Later, we did some research and found that the NASA also has these simulations. They have this experiment, and they found that potato sprouting.
放到这个外太空去了，然后土豆在那儿成功的发芽。
哎，
所以这
The
个
potato is
是非常有
growing,
希望的，将来土
and
豆
this
应该
is
是
something
第一
that
个
is
能
very
够
likely
爬在
that
火星上的这个食物
potatoes may grow in
那行了，我们
Mars. So now I feel safe that if we were to move to Mars, we have some food to eat.
在那个青藏高原。
So Master, you mentioned to us that when you're young, in the place that you live, there's also a lot of potatoes.
土豆的美味，那个好吃不？
Was it nice, Master? What's the taste like?
好吃啊！
我是说实话呀。
No, it's not nice. I don't find it good tasting because I live in a several-person home.
那时候缺少什么呢？
And during that time, what's lacking is oil.
我住在比较农民家的时候
Because I live with
这
the
个它就
farmers,
是没有食用油，
they don't have
也没有钱去
edible
买肉
vegetable oil and they don't have money to buy meat.
每
It's
顿
very
饭
poor.
就是
And
蒸土豆
every meal
烀
is
土豆
just steamed
切
potatoes,
土豆片儿
cut
切
potato
土豆条
slices,
土
or
豆
cut the
丝儿
potatoes
这个
into
土豆粥
or into very small slices, or even potato
对
porridge.
就那么一块一块的，一点儿油分也没有哈。
So there's
其实
no
我说实
oil.
话那个时候就
Honestly
是
speaking,
有点
during
饱
that
肚子不
period,
能不吃
I have to
就
eat
是
it
感觉
because I
的
was
那个
hungry.
因为吃的那个面疙瘩也是那个叫做青稞哈，青稞做那个面呢。就是
And even the
真挺难
noodles,
吃的哈
it is made
我
of
是说
high
不是挑
fiber
食我还是不挑食的人，
crops.
就是口感特别差
Actually, I'm not a person that's very
就是那
picky
个
with
时候吃的
food,
时候我就说
but
咋这么难
it
吃
just
所以我一
tastes
边吃
horrible.
说又
And
不
when
得
I
不
was
吃
eating,
但是心里总
I
觉得
in my
咋这么难
heart
吃
I kept thinking, "Oh, this tastes horrible."
对不
But
起
I
又
need
让
to
你们失望
eat the
了
food for
确实是没有
survival.
油。那你看现在我们吃麦当劳啊，吃什么炸薯条
So, Master, now a lot of potatoes we need oil. We have like McDonald's, French fries, and stuff like this.
哎，我呢就和那个那个地方的那个村支书，就村长啊，他的儿子带我们一群小孩儿哈，年龄小
I
孩儿
remember there was one
十几岁小孩儿
occasion
呢
that
就是
in the
到这个
village,
土
the
豆
village
田
head
里
brought
头
me to
他们
with
在
some of the
收土
kids
豆
to
春天成长起
the
来了
field
土豆长成熟
when
了
they are
啊
trying to harvest
成年人
the
呢就是
potatoes.
一大筐一大筐的
So I
一
see a
麻
lot
袋
of
一麻袋
adults
往
that
村里
carries
扛
a
回
lot
去
of
了
huge
运回去
baskets
了
to
那我
harvest the
们小孩
potatoes
呢
and
有
bring
村长的
home.
孩子领着就是我们也挖土豆
And for
而且
us,
我们
we
就
were
现吃
kids. We dig out the potatoes and we ate raw. In the past, I didn't know that. We brought some potatoes home
不要拿太大，像这个
and
太大
don't take too
我
big
们拿土豆
potatoes.
呢就最大是这么大
That's the
会比它再小一
maximum
点
size, or one size smaller is good because it
那
cooks
拿这个
faster.
土豆呢准备了一堆一小筐子
So we
然后再
prepare
教我呢
some of
在一
this
个这个农
potatoes,
田里头靠边缘上
and at the
浇水
side of
话
the
就有
field
鼓起来那块儿啊
对，
农田啊
是
那个土地啊
so in the ground
在
there
那
are a
时候
little.
往下挖一个坑
So we try to dig a hole,
在侧面这个
and at the
斜面
side
上
of it,
挖一个口儿像个
we
窑洞
have
口一样
like
然后我们
dig
就
a
捡那
mouth.
些柴火呀
So we get
小干
some,
树枝啊
we get some
弄了一
dried
大堆
twigs,
就准备烧
and we try to
还有
burn.
呢再
We're
捡
going to
那
set
些
fire,
土地里土疙瘩比较硬的比较干的土
and
疙
we
瘩
find some
之
hard
后我们把挖的这个差不多是个
hard
圆洞
soil,
口哈
and this we dug out a little hole, a soil
土
hole,
疙瘩和土豆大小差不多
and we put it inside the
空的哈垒出来像一个窑洞
pieces of hard
立起来
soil.
的像一个建筑
So it's like a structure,
不用泥巴，就是用干土往上。
You don't need soil, you just slowly stack
完
up.
了在底下呢，我们就烧
And
火
in it,
拿
we
来
start
那
a
些小
fire.
树枝啊，那些植物啊，
We
点
use the
燃就
twig
烧
to start the fire.
烧到什么程度呢？看的那个土克拉都给烧红了
When we see that
之后，
it
就
is
拿棍子
getting
呢
really
把
red,
这些有一些土克拉先拨拉下去到这个烧窑的这个洞里头，先铺一层，我们就拿这个捡来小土豆呢，
so we
先
put
铺上
the
一整层，再往上
we put the pig potatoes
糊
in
上去
there.
那个烧热的土克拉，之后再拿整个土。把这个刚才烧的，我们把它叫窑哈，烧这个窑全部覆盖
And we use some soil to cover up
用这个热量
completely
来捂
with
这个土
heat.
豆差不多一个
We
半小
try
时
to
以后
steam the potatoes about an hour and a
我们再
half.
把这个土慢慢扒拉开的时候，
We
其实有一股
slowly opens the
清香的味
soil,
道如
the
神
mud,
仙的食物
and
我就
we
开
can
始冒出来
smell
了
the fragrance of cooked potatoes.
最后把它扒拉出来
So
之后
eventually when we
这个
open
土
up,
豆我就吃过世界上最香的土
the
豆就是这个
potatoes I ate was the
哎呀
best
那
I've
个香
tasted.
啊而且它每一面儿哈都可能
And
被
every
煎烤的
part,
有的地方有点糊，
some
有
of
的
it
地方
will
是
be
焦黄
burned,
哎呦可好吃了
but
那个
tastes
皮又
really
硬
good.
又香里头呢
And in
怎
it,
么形容啊
松软
the
面，
potatoes
你吃
is,
了那个之后，没人在想念
how
雪
should I
糕之类
describe
的
it?
什么 ice cream
After you
根本就
taste
不好
that,
吃了
you never want to
就
eat
是
ice cream
哎这样
again.
烤土豆啊，口水要流出来了吧？
So do you find that
对
your saliva is drooling already?
那时候吃那个土豆是那种黑土豆还是白土豆？
Is it
红土豆
black, red,
那
or
个
white
地方种的
potatoes,
土豆呢
Master?
大概是这两种
Well, that place is similar to
一个
this.
脏兮兮的
One looks
这个
really
土豆里
dirty.
面呢煮出来有点儿它就是水少
So this potatoes, this type of potatoes that looks really dirty,
香
it doesn't have a lot of water
水分呢
content.
有点儿
For
适
the
中
yellowish
容易
ones,
脆
对，适合于炒土豆丝儿。
it
对
is
但是也有的
suitable
这个
to
品种
fried
土豆呢
potatoes.
也是挺面的，也挺香的哈。
But some of this
你碰运
is
气了
also quite
但是反正看着
tasty
像
too.
土一样土和
But
拉一
if
样
you look
这个
at
土豆
this,
通常里面比较好吃。
usually it tastes better
西方
inside.
主要是也是这个
Yes, the
土克拉
Western
这个大
side
土豆主
also,
要是用于
the
炒
Western
土豆
people also
也是炒土豆。
prefer
对
this
那
type
个土
of
豆泥也是
potatoes.
用它，因为它面咱面
They
嘛
use
对
that
那个
as
智慧
mashed
差不多
potatoes.
哎
是，
所以呢，给推荐呢，我们现在网友哈，
So
说那
our
怎么样
friend,
去模仿我那
You
个
may
烤
say
土豆
that
呢
how
其
to
实如果现在
follow
你家里头有烤箱哈，现在
my
都是电的
style.
烤箱哈，
If you
还有
have
煤气的
an
烤箱
oven
那个烤
at
箱呢
home,
用把这个土豆哈洗干净之后呢
after you
用
wash
锡
the
纸把它包
potatoes,
起来
you
用
wrap
锡纸
with
什么佐料都不要
aluminum
放
foil.
把一
Do-
个
you
包
don't
起
need
来
to
之后
put
放
anything.
进烤箱里烤。
Just put inside the
烤多久我不
oven.
知道
I'm not sure how
那
long
个
you should
可
put
以
in the
去
oven,
网上可以
查
查。
因为
but
你那个买烤箱的时候有说明书啊，
对，
这烤土豆
you
是
can
要
see
多
how
久
long you need to
啊
put in
对
there
应该
in the
这个
oven.
因为锡纸呢哈，它
Because
起了一个很好的导
The
热作用
aluminum
它
foil
使
will
得
be
这个
able
土
to
豆或者这
contain
个
the
食物呢
heat,
比较均匀的
and it will
得到它的
ensure
热
there's a
量
balanced flow
啊
of
这样
heat.
烤出来这个土豆呢
So that
比
when
较
the
容易熟啊
potatoes
比较香啊，差不
is
多
cooked,
好啊，
it will taste really good
我
and
们
it's
这个
more
不放佐料
fragrant.
哈等吃的时候，我们当中像村长的孩子就往上撒点盐，
So when we eat it,
模仿撒点盐
we just put a little bit of salt on
爱吃
it.
辣椒的撒点辣椒粉。
Those who
就
like
是这样
chili,
千万别蘸油啊
you
什么
just
的就
put a
滴
little
起
bit
来
of chili
影
flake.
响到土豆
Do
本
not
身的
add
那个
oil
芳香的感觉。
because it will
所以
actually
从那之后
affect
我觉得
the
哎脑子
fragrance, the
开始有
natural
点太少
fragrance of the potatoes.
吃了土豆之后，
感恩师傅给我
Thank you, masters, for sharing these recipes.
我这期直播好，这个真是
I think after this
一会儿
live
我们就
broadcast,
开始烤土豆
we will have people try to
下了课之后，
do this after the
现在这个全
class.
球哈有2/3的人都以土豆为主
Actually,
食
globally, about
德
a
国人
third
到
of
现在哈
the
一日三
populations
餐都是
relied
早
on
餐都是
potatoes.
以吃土豆，
Some
德国人
people
对，特别爱吃土豆。
科技那么发达还吃土豆，
they eat a lot of potatoes. The Western people love potatoes. You look at French fries, you look at mashed potatoes,
我
you
觉得
look
麦
at
当劳
potato
那个
salad.
他们那个 logo 那个标识哈，
In fact,
那个 M 啊，
I
就像
think
大薯
the
条
McDonald's, the
这个东西
logo,
勾引那小孩儿去
it
吃
looks
大
like a curved
英英
French
大薯
fries.
条吧哈，
Does it look like a curved potatoes
英国的
or
也
French
是因为
fries?
它那个叫什么叫国宴呐哈。
Even
对
in Britain,
国王
the
女王
so-called
还是
the
谁国王
national
要请
feast,
人吃饭， 他们的著名的这个国宴的一道菜就叫炸鱼薯条嘛。
They have
一
fried
块鱼再加上炸薯条，
fish and chips,
多高级！
and the chips itself is
对，
potatoes.
刚才也讲了这个土豆的移民史哈。
We also talk about the migrations of potatoes from South America to Europe to Central Asia, to eventually to Far
那
East.
昆律师也介绍它的营养成分呗。
So maybe now, Sister Kunti, you can introduce the nutritional values.
对，
Yes, so we talk about it is also a form of vegetables. It is also a form of food. So it is a 3-in-1.
水果咱们都生着
Why
吃
is
嘛
it known as fruits? Because it has nutritional values of fruits.
看哈，对啊。 首先呢，对，那咱既然说到水果了
So since we say there's food, let's look at this chemical compositions of the potato tuber. It's about 70% is water, it's about 20% is about starch, and they also have proteins and fiber and fatty acids. On top of that, it has micronutrients. So we can compare between potatoes and apple. So I say that it is also a form of fruits. So the European people call potatoes as underground apple. So it has various nutritions as well. But when we compare apple with potatoes, let's look at this. Let's look at the apple has 4.6 milligrams of vitamin C. So potatoes has 19.7. It's 4 times of apple.
这个还真没想到。
Well, that's a lot. That's very high. So if we look at vitamins B and we look at irons, all this
吃了土豆就不用
is much higher.
每天吃一个土豆，绝对不用去看医生。
So if you take a potatoes a day, you don't need to see doctors.
苹果是生的。
But you have to eat cooked potatoes. And that's why potatoes is so well
还有一种很重要的那个微量元素
consumed
叫钾哈
everywhere.
那个比如说什么对血压的
We
调
talk
整
about
啊
potassium as well.
哈
Especially when you're
就跟我说
tired,
嘛
you
说你
need
要觉得
that.
累了你就吃根香蕉
And someone ever told me before that if you're tired, you just take a banana because of the high potassium.
对人身体是补充能量
And
特别
Master
好
says
对
that
心脏和肾脏也好
the potassium is very good in helping us to replenish our energy, and it's also good for our heart.
真假？
你看多厉害
So let's look at this. Look at the potassium.
吃香蕉了
The potassium of potatoes is much higher than banana.
135毫克，香蕉同样100克才含358。是土豆的一半以上。
It's about more than 1.5 times that of banana.
还能预防中风、心脏病。
So if you eat potatoes, you can even help to prevent stroke.
好像对于糖尿病患者吃也是挺好，
对
是吗？
I think potatoes is also good for people who are diabetes
它这个淀粉就是好淀粉
because the type of starch within the potatoes is actually good.
馒头、大白馒头、大米饭那个是不一样的。这个
就是跟
土豆
白米白面不一样，
对，
是吗
土豆它跟玉米啊、红薯啊，就这几个。
So compared to white rice and white flour, they can better maintain blood sugar levels.
不是精粮。
And it contains a special type of starch. It is called resistant starch. And this starch becomes a source of nutrition for beneficial bacteria in the intestines. So many studies have linked resistant starch to various health benefits, including reducing insulin resistance, thus improving the blood sugar control.
叫抗性淀粉。这个淀粉呢，它还研究起来呢，它就是在大肠里边成为肠道中的。
So this is a beneficial bacteria in the intestines.
没错，就益生菌，它得吃这种淀粉才能生长啊。所以你看，我们现在都知道益生菌在肠道中和对整个人体的免疫功能的重要性哈。所以我们要吃土豆。
So that's why it's important for us to eat potatoes.
而且
So that we have
抗性淀粉呢。
good bacteria in the stomach.
它就改善这个血糖控制。好神奇啊！
So that's amazing. So people who are diabetes can also eat potatoes? Yes.
神赐的吧？
对，是的，是的。
Don't you agree with me that this is gifted by the God?
还有就是 有的人他有反应哈，就说吃了一大顿土豆之后，吃好多土豆以后，这胃好胀。
Some people also have the feelings that after they eat potatoes, they feel very bloated. Why is it so? I think it's just because they ate too much. Normally, if you take 1 or 2, that's good enough. In fact, in traditional Chinese medicines, the potatoes are believed to invigorate the spleen and stomach. It also nourishes the stomach qi and also strengthens the body and kidneys. So Master says that we talk about the potatoes represent the earth. So that's why it helps with the spleen. And that is very important. It can help with our digestions and absorptions. It helps in the balancing of that. And that's why our spleen health is so important. Say, for example, who always have acid reflux. I think if you take the charcoal skin, potato skin, it also helps. So, Master, I have another question. So, a lot of people want to control their weight, and they dare not eat too much starch-based food. So, can a person who is trying to lose weight eat potatoes? Yes, because potato is a very balanced food. I don't think eating potatoes will make you fat. In fact, it is low in fat. If you look at the calories, it has lower calories than rice. But I need to say that as exceptions, if you go to the Western restaurants, if you go to McDonald's, if you like to eat French fries, anything that goes through high heat, the content itself will change. Maybe it will cause constipations. Yes, something that will cause stuck in the digestive systems. But if you eat mashed potatoes or if it's baked potatoes, then that's perfectly fine. So that's why it's important not to take too much oil, fried food, fried potato, or fried French fry.
是是是，但是就算能排出来，有一种可以吃油的方法哈。我们比如说这个土豆，我是蒸熟的。
So, for example, if you steam potatoes, because of your needs of your body, you add a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of salt.
跟你那一个一盘小酱料当中，它其中有食用油，
So they have some oil. You can add a little bit of that to potatoes. To steam potatoes, that's fine. What I'm saying is that fried food, you use a lot of fried oil. Fried French fries, you try to avoid that. But we also find that after eating potatoes, we feel very full. We may not want to eat other stuff. So it is low calories, high fibers. So eating potatoes can aid in weight loss.
养脾胃呀，对，你吃了这个，那肯定瘦人主要是脾胃不太好。
对
啊，对，养了脾胃之后，自然就变丰满了，健康了。
是，
所以瘦人胖人都得吃土豆。
So potatoes is actually very good.
还是提醒大家，就是第一个什么都不能吃多了。
But once, as a reminder, I just want to remind all that you try to avoid eating excessively and try to avoid eating fried potatoes or French fries. But I also heard that potatoes have a miraculous effect on the body. Yes, for people who have very dark rings, dark eyes, you can actually consider place on your eyes. It has beneficial for beauty. It has whitening effect. It can reduce dark circles.
其实我都想的哈，其实 用土豆泡水之后产生这个淀粉水。
In fact, I think if you can use the potatoes, you cut potatoes
30分钟之后
and water, you soak it in there and use the water, the starch water,
对于说把你
to
这个皮肤下面的
put it
一些
onto your
就是死皮
face.
哈
It may actually help
这个的
with
话
the
呢就是一
skin.
些
斑斑点点疤痕。
油腻呀，一些肮脏的那个
It can
带这个
help
毛
with
孔
your
这种
skin
东西给它洗出来
pigmentations.
了就带出来了，
有道理。
并且没什么副作用。
And doesn't have any negative side effect. It's all
你看
natural.
土豆片儿，你要贴在你脸上，哪里颜色不太正哈，贴一贴的话，它可能给你中和了。
Maybe you can consider using sliced potato
今天
and
下先
put on
吃
your
土豆
face.
然后再贴土豆。
晚上再土豆美容。
再来个土豆浴，
So you can even have a spa, a potato
美
spa.
容之后肯定会感到这个脸。
I'm sure after that you will find that your skin becomes much
对
如果这个土豆
better.
再蘸点儿其实细致的黄土的话更好。这是我个人增加一个部分哈。
I would actually add a little bit of soil as well. Maybe it can be like a
它
mud.
有收敛美容，
You'll be able
来
to
消除一
have
些不该有的东西。
a way to extract impurities on the face
皮肤下垂
or
啊
on the
松软
skins.
啊
对，它有收紧作用。
对。
It also reduces
因为
puffiness.
其实我小时候就发现一件事情哈，因为在青
When
藏
I
高
was
原
young,
呢
I remember
手上
that
占油脂太多，是特别常见的事情。
it
原
is.
因我就不讲了哈。
I find
其
that
实
when I
有
was
时候找不到肥
in,
皂怎么办呢？
I couldn't find a bar or
找
soap.
那个土壤哈，拿个土在手上
So
搓
I
一
just
搓
use some
拿
mud
水再洗一下
and I
最多
just
2
use that to wash my
比肥皂要
hands,
干净多
and I find that it
没
is
有
very
任何副
clean
作用
and
你
there's
洗
no
完之后
side
你的
effect.
手就瘦了。
And after that, you
那
find
你用
that
这个
your
用
hands
防
slim
腐洗
down.
脸呢，
So if you
你
use
脸就
soil
瘦了呀。
to
你本来
wash
就
your
胖了，
face,
洗完脸变成瘦
you
子
find that your face slim down.
美容。
对，
It has
就是这样的
beauty, beneficial. It's beneficial for
说到这个
beauty.
对皮肤的这个保养嘛哈。
So we talk
确
about
实
its
是像
positive
对那个
effect
湿
on the
疹啊
skin.
这
It
个
is
皮肤
also
上的
good.
这些也是贴上那个土豆，
对
尤其是土豆皮儿啊。小的时候，其实我们家就是也是这样讲的，比如有的时候不小心划个口子哈。
So I remember when we were
就是
young
土豆
that
皮儿啊
when
贴上
if we have some
帮助
cuts
伤口愈合。
and we just use a cut
小偏方了
potatoes
哈
小偏
and
方
place on the cut area and it will help
烧
with
伤
healing.
烫伤啊
Or even if there are some burnt, you can use that as well.
啊，都是可以。
用土豆
Or
皮
even
来
if you
试
have
哈
eczema,
好的好的
You can use
对
potatoes,
我还
wash,
看到
peel,
过就是土豆也
and
能
mash
治
into a
便秘的
paste
时
and
候
apply
啊
into
就是说把
the
这个土
affected
豆啊
area.
就是榨成汁儿，然后给它熬成土豆粥、土豆糊糊。
I've
哈
also
如
seen
果
that
每天
people
早上
use
想
potatoes
放
to
可以
make
放一
into
点放一
porridge
放也可以，吃个2勺，再配
and
一杯
just
开
add a
水
little
对
bit
说这样对
of.
便秘会有帮助。
And they say it's also treat. It can also help with constipations.
说空腹吃2勺。
Peel and chop potatoes into small pieces.
狗都有点
Then
这个要尝试
simmer
一
the
下哈
juice over low
这
heat
个
until
我还以
thickened.
为是蜂蜜的作用，
And
这
then
个土豆它
add
黏糊糊
honey
的
to
它还
taste.
促进
Stir well.
土豆是治便秘
哦
中医里面有说土豆是对。
And then
对
if you were to
消化
drink 2
便秘啊
tablespoons on an empty stomach every morning with a glass of warm water,
又帮排泄
it is good for constipations. It will
万
help
能性食物啊，
in that.
反正是挺好的。
对，
厉害。
厉害厉害，对，刚才就简单也说到这个烧伤、烫伤嘛，哈。
对对对
那说那
So
个
we also
印度
talk
呢
about
也
it
是
helps
啊
with
人家都是那个
pain
在
relief
医疗中都是用这个土豆皮啊，还有包括现在可能其他的国家也是。
And
他把
even
这个
now,
马铃薯
in some
把
other
这个
countries,
煮熟
they cook the
20分钟
potatoes
啊，然后在
20
那个无
minutes
菌的情况下把皮剥下来，把那个皮保存在4度的环境里
and
下。
they remove
然
the
后在治疗
skin
烧伤
and
的时候
kept
就
it
把
at
那个土
4
豆皮拿过来
degrees.
贴
And
到
when
那个
there's a
烧伤的
burnt,
地方
they use the
哦
potato
这
skin
就
to
是一个
place
非常
on
非常科学的一
the
种
burnt
应用
area.
哦，
因为一般烧伤的皮肤都会用人的皮肤去
对
盖啊，
对，
但是土豆皮可能还是很接近的，就是从
对
生理的这个。
So
啊
maybe potato
角度来
skins is
讲
very similar to
就是关
human
键它的那种
skins.
含有的元素成分哈，就对于这个一个是这个烧伤、烫伤，
I think because of the
对
components,
人体哈，就起到了一个很好的一个
It is very effective
恢复作用。
to help in the healings of burnt
刚才
skin.
我说你说烧伤烫伤这件事儿，大家应该记住哈，
对，很
这
重要，
挺难得的。
很重要，
就是
对
轻微的都可以去
So
试
if you have a
烧
slight
伤啊
burnt,
很容易留下疤痕。
很容易
it is
让
very
人
easy
会
for
让
it to
长
leave
上
a
对
scar.
我们平时做饭什么，有的时候油崩出
So
来会有
sometimes
常
we're
常被
cooking,
烫
we have the oil
李时
and
珍是
burn
啥时代的人呢？
that help
明
us.
朝
你看，李时珍就知道土豆。
Actually, Li Shizhen,
他已经感到了土豆的
who is the master of traditional Chinese medicine, so in the continuums of materia medical, there's records of potatoes that have the effects of tonifying qi, and it has the able to, it also has the anti-inflammatory, promoting blood circulations, and reducing swelling and relieving pain.
那我记得师傅今天给我们分享过一个偏方，就是它土豆对胃好像还是，胃的问题也是有帮助的。
胃溃疡。
这都是
师傅，
在青海的一个老大妈哈，对，那她呢就是，因为很多孙子嘛，哎，这小孩儿出点身体问题常见的，哎，可是他家呢那个儿媳妇，那个胃啊
So
胃
in Qinghai, there's a mother, and the son, he has a difficulty with
痛
digestions,
起来就那样子，
and he always have this stomach
那我就感觉有
pain.
点像胃痉挛那种。胃痉挛如果弄不好的话，它可能是
I feel
有
that the
胃
person has some stomach
那个胃
ulcers.
造成的胃痉挛哈。
对，
哎，那就是这样子。那我的师傅呢，就给一个小偏方。
So my master
他
gave
就
a
说呢
special
他也
methods
是听说的，
to the mom.
就用这个土豆呢，这个把它给它捣碎之后，
My master
汁儿挤
told
出来
her
就那么喝。
to peel the potatoes and squeeze the juice and
在什么样
drink.
的情况下加点这个生姜的姜汁儿？
I can't remember, but at a certain time you need to add some ginger. But it's better to
就是
cook
每天就喝那么，也就是像过去那个小酒
the
杯哈
potatoes
很小
and
的
make it
很
into
小
a
的小酒杯
small
哎，
glass, like a wine
也
glass.
就是他每天那么就是一顿就3小杯。
So you drink 3 small cups and after every meal.
生土豆汁儿。
So these are actually
早晨起来
uncooked
吃饭
potato
前
juice.
先来它一
So before the
3 杯
food,
就是这
you
样
just
哈
drink 3
这个
small
胃
cups.
痉挛
我的
胃溃
印象是
疡
没多久就好了。
I remember it
很
didn't
多
take
年了
her
有点
long
记忆的淡化了
for the
哈
son to
就是
recover,
有
but
这
it
个
has
问
been
题
a while, so my
那么
memory also
再
fade.
后来呢，就是说，这个我认识这老太太呢，就开始对土豆就研究哈。
And after
她就
that,
听别
the,
人
the
说，
mother starts to
有一次
learn
呢
more about
她那个
potatoes.
有个孙子呢，头上呢长了很多那个疮。
So once
啊
the
不知道什么原因
grandson
长的疮
has
就是
some
说
growth
现在小孩很
at
少
the
了
head,
因为过去可能也是营养不良嘛。
I think because of
这老太太
malnutrition,
呢，不是听谁说的？
so
就把一
this
个土
old
豆呢
lady
削开一块儿，
take
不
a
是等挤出
potatoes,
汁儿来
cut
啊
a slice,
她拿削开的这个部分
and
呢
this
在
part
长疮地方抹
and
擦一擦
and
擦一
actually
擦也是一个礼
try
拜之后大概就
to
好玩儿哈。
press on the areas, affected areas, and after a month,
一般可
the
能用不到
areas
这个部分
is fine.
所以它
现在不用西药了。
对土豆当中，它本身就尤其是生土豆哈，生土豆汁儿当中，它有一种对让伤口收敛的作用。
So the potato itself, the raw potato itself, has a certain
收
certain
敛生肌，消炎
properties that
因为它里头
promote
带
growth
青霉素嘛
that promote cell
这个
growth.
成分
消炎。
对，所以这个讯息其实大家
Because there's
应该记住一点啊很重要。
antibiotics, natural antibiotics inside, so it helps with the healing as well.
消炎还有长肉的那个好处，
对
其实一样，它胃溃疡它就是胃里边它溃疡了嘛，
对对
也是那个表面坏掉了嘛。
So actually, for stomach ulcers, it's the same. That's because the wall of the stomach
确实从五行来说呢，这个土豆再加上它本有这个颜色
has been
啊
affected. So you use the potato juice to help with the
那
healings.
这个土呢，如果好的话，它是协调整个五脏六腑，让它整个机能啊重新生长和恢复这个作用力啊，所以把这个
So
土
for
地啊
these potatoes,
提
it
供给
represents
土
the
豆啊
earth,
应该会
so
起
it
这
will
个
help with the stomach.
真是好。
Because once we help
这
the
全
healing
能
of the
全能的
stomach,
土豆啊哈这
then we'll
它
be
不光食
able
用
to
这么
nourish
好
our
药物也
qi,
这么好
then we'll be
而且
able to
在
gain
就
our
是
health back.
其他的就是在医疗啊， 啊，这个纺织啊，一些其他领域也都有被用到啊。对，就师傅刚才讲的那个。
So yes, indeed, potato is used in various parts, even in the medicine field. Even in some of the tablets, the capsule, they use potato starch to use it. And also potatoes fibers can be used to make clothes. We also have this potato plastic. And it can be recycled. We can use as potato papers as well.
挺有趣的，就石油钻探公司啊，他们还用土豆来清洁钻头。
哎，这不就刚才师傅说的那油乎乎的手用搓土的那个方式，他这个等于把土变成土豆，是，对，去清洗油脂，你看吧。
So it can also be used to remove oil.
含量哈，它和那个油呢，有时候又产生一种对抗作用。哎，
对，
这样。
好，那土豆这么好，我们也说了，再好的东西也不能够过量。
But we also want to stress that even though it's good, we also want to consume in moderations because health, we don't want to eat excessively.
发芽了
就不能吃了，
不能吃了。
就是哪些不能吃哈，咱们交流一下哈。
好的。
说了这么多好呢，但是你不知道。
But there are also some precautions when eating potatoes.
会出问题。
对。
So we must make sure that we don't consume excessively because potatoes have a high starch content, and excessive intake of which may lead to weight gains and cardiovascular risks. Therefore, we should consume them in moderations.
我们禅修也提倡简约生活哈。
So in meditations,
食物一旦坏了之后
we must understand, although we stress that it's important not to waste, but once the food is spoiled, we should throw them away because we do not want to consume food that's poisonous.
还有一个呢，就是说我们在切土豆的时候，一刀下去。
So when we cut the potatoes, if there is some odd smell or the potato is black inside when cut open, it should not be eaten. Or if you find that some potatoes turn green, it is indications that there's presence of solanine and is a toxin, and we should discard them because consuming too much of it can be harmful to the body.
这个咱们都是节约惯了嘛，就那发芽子的那种土豆哈。
坚决不要吃哈。
Yes, so whenever there's a sprout or green parts, we must try to throw. We shouldn't try to eat it. We should just throw that away because it is on the same potato body. So when you notice there's a sprout, it may mean that the whole potato is spoiled. So do not take the risk. Because the production level is high, and that's why it's not too expensive. So no matter how we want to have a frugal life, we must make sure that once it's spoiled, we discard them.
与它相关的中毒的故事，好吧？相关的哈。
Let me share with you a stories indirectly relating to the poisonous potatoes. In my hometown in Hebei, I was about 6 years old. 5 to 6 years old. During winter, it's very cold. So the ground looks dark and black because there's no grass, there's no plants with green leaves. So how do they preserve vegetables? So they preserve cabbage or onions. They didn't have a fridge. So during winter, they want to preserve the vegetables to eat for 3 months. So you consume however much you preserve. So they will dig a hole. So every place, the depth is different. So in my village, there are some who dug deeper. So there's a boy, he's about 2 to 3 years older than us. He went down to pick some things. It's a vertical hole. So this child jumped in. After he jumped in, he didn't come up. So the parent, he fainted, and the parents brought him up. And after 1 month, he found that he has this, he became deaf. he can't speak. Because of the gas, the poisonous gas,
对，整个脑神经
and
中毒
affected
哈
his
他那个中毒的不
his
是那么重
nerves.
就成了哑巴
and he couldn't speak.
啊，那个
He
那
couldn't
小孩
hear
长得有白
anymore.
有净的还是
Actually, the boy was very good
对
looking.
但他那个窖里头就有土豆啊、
But
白
in
菜
that
啊、萝卜之类的，
They have
混着这个
potatoes,
气息哈
so they have other like cabbage.
那吃土豆中毒的之后也是上吐下泻，全身出虚汗。
So he died. He didn't die, but he suffered.
都是可能啊，所以不要吃过期的或者已经
So anything that is expired, try not to
我
eat
又
it.
想起来这个土豆的神奇哈，就刚才不是我们说了，这土豆有好多种，也是为了
So just now we
适应
talk
那个
about
土豆
potatoes
生
that
长
has
环境嘛
various
对所以
varieties.
它这个发芽期，我刚才说了，
And
生
when
长
it's
我们说
sprouting
土豆成熟了之后呢，有3个月的休眠期，3个月以后这个
I remember Master mentioned that after the potatoes is harvest, it has this 3 months of storage period, and then it will start to sprout. Why is it that it has a poisonous? It becomes poisonous because it's going to sprout. It may,
它为了让自己生长下去，
in order to ensure that it can continue to grow,
我觉得你的解释挺好的。
it will actually produce this poisonous gas to protect itself.
你就别吃。
But in all things,
理由不管是不是为了生长哈，它就是
there is a period that the things will be spoiled
它就会变坏。
when you don't have the good temperature.
过期的食物
So anything that's spoiled or expire, do not eat
不管
them.
多节约，这个坏的食物尽量别吃。
Try to avoid eating
大家
them.
说起这个土豆的储存，其实还是挺容易的。
So we talk about the
啊
storage
就是
of
说
potatoes
1
is
到
actually
3
quite
度之
easy.
间，只要干燥通风，不要见光，
As
就能
long
储存
as
8 到
it's
9个月。啊，
不见
不发芽
光很重
啊。
要。
No light,
温度
it
也
is
很
in
重要
darkness.
温度在这
You
个1
maintain
到3度之
the
间是最好的
temperature,
对
low
我
temperature.
觉得土豆在食物之中哈，食物和蔬菜之中，它自然的这个保鲜期是最长的。
Actually, I think that it can store the longest, longer than vegetables.
对，
是的，
对，是，
对，
挺好的，
那咱们聊土豆，聊土豆。我知道这个北美的孩子们，现在其实世界各地的孩子们都爱吃的一个零食。
So what is the best-selling snack in the United
我觉得
States?
现在我们的观众中很多都是一边听着
In
直播
fact,
一边
I
吃
know
着
that
睡觉
many of our online friends may be eating potatoes snacks while listening to our live
我
broadcast.
吃的不多哈。
I don't eat a lot of potato chips,
发干哈。
对，
其实我觉得真是挺香的。
but it's actually very nice tasting.
它是怎么给发明出来的？
How did
来
it
给
started?
讲哈这个也是可能100年前的事情
So
吧。
it's about 100 years
当时呢
ago.
是在哪儿啊？
在纽约州吧，
在纽
好像是
约州啊，
哎，
对，有一个黑人
So
厨师
there is a
啊
famous
他是专门
African American
做薯
chef
条的
working in New York.
他做那个薯条呢，哎，就是他，对。
So
这
he
老兄
invented,
他
this
炸
is
薯条的
Crumbs, he
结果有一个
invented
顾客吧
potato
老
chips
来退货
while
了
working
退
in a
货了
restaurant.
他炸
He has a
对
picky
所以他那
customer
个炸那个薯条
repeatedly
太厚
returned
了
a serving
那
of
个
French
薯条
fries,
太厚了
complaining that they were
经
too
常退
thick.
货呢这老兄就
Frustrated
不高
by
兴
the
了
customer
他说
demands,
我来报复你
Crumbs
一下
came
你
up
嫌厚
with
我给
a
你切
re-
得薄薄的
retaliatory
拿那个
idea.
呢他就刀工也好哈嚓嚓切的
So he sliced a batch of potatoes,
对，然
paper
后就
tinned,
过油就炸了
and he
对
fried
然后
them
哎一
until
卷起一
crispy.
点然后很脆的很香脆这种然后他再加上各种
And then he
调味
seasoned
什么什么的对对对
them with generous salt.
对弄好多说这回你不嫌这个厚了吧给这顾客了
And he served the
他本来想
customer.
着顾客还不得骂他一顿哈结果这顾客
And surprisingly, the customer loved them.
哇立马就传开了
And soon, Crumb became famous for his special potato chips.
我也要那种我也要那种就开始都要薯片了对然后他就
So Crumb's potato chips remained a local delicacy.
是这么发明出来的然后后来有一个那个推销员他叫 Herman Lay
Until a salesman and entrepreneur,
然后就
Herman Lay,
发现这东西好吃哈然后就到处
he
去
found
推
this to
销
be
到处
good.
去传播
And he began traveling
而
across
且他就成立了
the
这个
country.
Lay's 这个薯片公司就现在
And he also introduced, he also set up Lay's, the company, the potato companies.
薯片对就是这个老兄就把这个等于把专利买下来了
So he promoted
非常好地去
the
做
Lay
营销
potato
推
chips.
广出去了。
对现在都 几十年了，将近100年了哈。
It's almost 100 years now.
它的 Lay's 薯片。
And Lay's emerged as a leading potato chips brand in the United States.
2023年啊，这个 Lay's 销售了
It's selling 1.4 billion bags,
和中国人口一样多。
是
the same size as the China populations.
多少火车
流水线，你看多少
Look at the production cycle.
是
哇，几个小时出来之后，已经装好的小盒儿或者袋子
包
了。
啊，
哇，
到了各家各户。
明天咱得吃点儿哈。
这个也是不多吃啊，偶尔吃。
So you can
香的。
try not to eat too much, but it's quite nice, so you can
在国外
eat in
看
moderations.
哈，投入之后，不是吃爆米花就是吃炸薯片儿
So in
啊，就是这样。
the Western
小
world,
朋友开 party
when people have parties, they usually serve
土豆这个东西
potato chips
很有安慰性
and
哦，
吃了
conflict.
之后就让人觉得很满足，
很满足。
对，很高
很
兴
温暖。
没
For some reason, when they eat potato chips, they feel very good.
啊，因为薄嘛，就薄的话总觉得没吃饱嘛，他继续往嘴里塞就是。
对，所以这个土豆为什么这么受欢迎哈？虽然是一个南美来的移民，
Although
整个遍布
potato was from South America, but now it has spread globally.
这个小食品来说的话，土豆片儿应该是首屈一指吧。
I think as a snack, I think potato chips is highly well loved.
对呀，你看哈，刚才说这个类这个哈，其实欧洲也有很多大品牌哈。
Actually, in Europe, there are also many brands. They also have their markets,
它就纯薯片儿嘛。
对，
然后不同的味道，老是有
and everyone have its own different
另
flavor.
外一种食物能卖这么多包吗？
Do you know if there is another type of food that
北
can
美就是去电影院儿才可能买包爆米花，
so
是吧？
that can surpass
那
them?
岁数还得有时候懒得嚼它，是吧？
巧克力肯定也没有薯片
What about
那么
chocolates?
很多人不
Is it as famous
你要
or as
减肥就
popular?
少吃巧克力。
No, if you want to lose weight, you should try to avoid eating potato chips.
肯定吃不过，那是
上岁数吃不了
冬。天更不能吃。
But if you reach a certain age, you find that you are not able to take too
我
much.
想起麦当劳那个 M，刚才不是说了吗？就像一个弯曲的薯条儿，是吧？
So if you look at the McDonald's, the logo,
都不是这个
I
这
think
个
it
土豆儿
does
的
looks
产品嘛
like
你迈向全世界，它是最大的一种独立
a
销售的一种
curved
食物
French fries.
连
对不对
锁店。？
你说你卖饼干儿的话
And the popularity
饼干儿它
exceeds
掺了很多
popcorns
种
as
东西
well.
嘛
对
它不可能是纯土豆儿，对不对？
对，
所以你看薯片儿，还麦当劳炸薯条儿，你看
So
都是世界
McDonald's
最大连锁店哈。
French fries is very popular.
就这个，哎呀，这个
土豆
土豆儿
不得了，
了不起。
是
也介绍一下我们加拿大的土豆也特别好吃。
对，
也是哈，就师傅桌上摆的那几种都特别好吃。
Actually, in Canada,
也是
the
这个
various
小的应该是
varieties
熟
of
的嘛
potatoes
熟了，
is also very good.
熟了。
对你怎么知道？
This size is so small. Is it ripe already?
别觉着老师说我
告诉我说可以吃了，可以
你说它就是长得个儿小，其实是熟了，对不对？
It is actually ripe, although it's small in
小
size.
土豆儿，好
一
吧，好吧
般他们。用这个来做沙拉。
Some they use it to
这
make
个
salad.
土豆比较多于做沙拉，而且人家不削这个皮儿，就留着这个皮儿。
And they
记
keep
得
the
我们去
skin.
一些西餐厅的时候，
I know when we go to
这个小
some
土豆呢
Western
好
restaurants,
像压扁了一下，
they seems to
没有
have
切
they don't
稍微压了
even
一下
they don't
之后
even
就烤
cut
了
this.
对对对。
They
就像那个
actually
筋道咬
bake
的
it
感觉哈，
and it
放着
tastes
油
good.
盐呢再烤一下
And they add a little bit of salt and oil
其实用那个双面的电锅这么去煎它也可以，
and
是
they
吧？
just pan fry it.
啊，
It tastes good too.
这么小，我那个等哪一天在禅堂种上几盆儿哈。
Maybe I should try to plant at our meditation center.
种一个长一盆儿。
对呀，是，
对，加拿大土豆很好吃。
这土豆真的是在这个食物中，我们刚才讲哈，它这个又是这么能够适应各类环境。
As we said earlier, it is not only very
又是菜又是
versatile,
水果
it is
它
very
怎么能够这么
adaptable.
完美呀
But why is it so
这种食物我们还
perfect,
没看到
Master?
其他的食物
We have
这么
not
完
seen
美的
any
表
other
现
food that's so good as
因为
potatoes.
是神赐的
Well, that's
食
because
物
it's God-given food.
因为我觉得哈，这是我自己的感
My
觉
own feelings
就是
is that
因为人类慢慢随着这个，一个是在古代的话，就是人口不是很多的情况下，
Humans in ancient
但是呢
times, their
比如说你没有
population
农
is
药
not a lot,
对吧？
but there's no
所有的你的
pesticides.
人也吃，虫子也吃， 其他动物也吃，是吧？所以人是给这个动物和虫子之间抢粮食吃。
So humans actually fight for food with insects.
1亩的话，过去呢没有农药的时候呢，你就可能是300公斤，对吧？一下产量就变少。
You may not have enough productions.
所以呢，再加上一个天灾人祸。
So when there are like natural disaster, or if let's say there is lack of rains for a year, or if there is war going on,
或者是死亡了，这个土地的话没人耕种了，
there's not enough men
大量的土地闲置
to
而没有产量，
cultivate the crops.
世界大乱，
The productions
卖儿
reduce,
卖女啊，
then
大家
the
想
world
想
is
为什
in
么不看自己的
chaos.
孩子没办法
People
给
may
弄
end up having to sell their son and
在地
daughter.
方的我就不敢讲了哈，比这个说的还更惨，真严重的时候啊。所以
There are
有时候
even
你在
worse
看
scenarios
说原来
and
这个全世界
situations.
比如说从一个国家吧，说原来是1亿，打了10年仗之后，剩下5000万。
Let's say a country,
那
they
那
have
死的难都是男人嘛，
10,
都是女人
100
一样
millions
跟
of
着死
people.
是这样。
But after the
大家的
war,
农田没有
they're
收
left
成了
with
光
half,
蛋
less
烂
than
了，他
half
吃什么
of the
呢？
people.
那就早死了呗。
So what do they
你看
eat?
像婴儿呢，
What do they?
小
What do
婴
you have a
儿
baby?
儿童
You have
死
young
得更快
children.
啊，
They may die
跑不及
because
啊
of lack of
没有
food.
家长管呢，跑丢了，掉河里了，是吧？这死亡率很高。
So the death
所以因为
toll
这
is
样
very
的人
high.
类这个痛苦哈，因为对于粮食的竞争，还再
So
加上
because
天
of
灾人祸的
competitions
时候
for food
哎，
and
其
because
实我
of
相
natural
信
disaster,
民众生心中的苦难哈，
I
就是
think
上天祈祷啊，神呐，
there are some who
哎
pray
别
to
别有
heaven
战争了啊
and
给我
ask
们点粮食吧
heaven to give us some
哎你
food.
想，你现在这粮食的产量是一种注定的呀，对不对？
But if you think about it, the existing food has a very
哎，还有很多东西，有些
the
这个植物
production itself, the
某些
yield
突然还
itself
种不
is
出来
very fixed.
哎，神受感动之后说，
So when God
研究
is
一种
touched,
特别容易种植，
God
适应所有土
God
壤的，
give us
所有
a type of
所有
food
气候的，
that's
对
available
都可以的。
to all,
啊，虫子有不太爱
regardless
吃的
of the
这种
weather
食物
conditions
而且呢，除了它是粮食
and the
之外，
weather.
它本身呢还是蔬菜。
Not only
就
it
是
is a
你就
form
没有
of
钱买蔬菜没
food,
关系，吃它就有
it
了。
is a form of
没有钱买
vegetables.
水果没事儿，
It
吃
is
这个就
also a
够了
form of fruits.
甚至吃了它之后还减少疾病。你看
And in fact, by eating it, you also reduce certain
所以
disease.
这后来神赐给人类，
And that's why it's a God-given
就是这样
food.
所以它是个全能性的一个食物啊。我觉得它不是从人类有了它就有了，它不可能。
哎，那师傅，这个神是把土豆从他那个地方带过来的
But
呢
Master, how did it come
到
from?
了地球上他创造出来的呢？
Is it created?
那我现在就是猜想，那我觉得呢，
Well,
首先它这个
my
DNA
guess is that
就是它这个原始种子
the DNA itself
是从太空来的，
is from outer space.
神那个地方，
就在那个神那个国度，或者与神相关的一个国度，他在那找这个 DNA，特别适合在这里。
So this DNA from the outer space is very suitable for Earth.
原始种子，
就带到地球上来了。
哎，把这个 DNA 拿过来，
And
但是呢，和
they
地
bring
球
the
的
DNA
这怎么样去适应
to
它呢
Earth.
混合了地球当中
So how
最重
can
要的
it-
一个资源就是土
And the
壤。
main ingredients comes from the
他就
soil.
研究了，可以，他也收取了地球上几乎每个州、每个地区的各种土壤。
They have already researched the soil from various parts of the land.
DNA 的这元素全混合进去，
After they mix with the DNAs,
元素有地球本身这个
so
各种
obviously
土
there
壤
are
的
two
元素
components,
混
the
合到
outer
一起
space
而创
and
造
the
出了这个
soil,
土豆，
and it's
中文翻译
created.
出来叫土豆。
对
另外一个叫洋芋，
对
洋呢从西洋传过来的嘛，
对，
叫洋芋。
像个芋头似的。
对，像芋头。对。
So the potatoes are earthy,
但是
low
原有
key,
的
and
译
grow
名呢就叫
silently
土豆
without attracting
那其
attentions.
实有时候也叫天意哈。那中文
So
为啥
maybe
叫
it's a
土豆
sign
呢
of God.
因为它有养
Why
胃
is it that
特别适合于脾胃接受它，是
we
吧？又带有全
it
能
is
的这个
actually
食物
very suitable
带有点那
to
种
help
营养
with the
加医疗
spleen
性的食物，
对，真很神奇。
It also has some medicinal values attached to potatoes.
所以就是
就是外
神
太
造
空和
有外太空
地球
和
上的
So it's a combination
以
of
土壤
outer
为
space
主的
and
这样的
soil
能
as
量
the base
结合体
component.
而产生了这个东西。
Well, you may find that this may sound a little bit more sacred and difficult for you to understand. But in Buddhism, there's this saying that all of us, we have 4 main components: the earth, water, fire, and wind. And there are also the 5 elements. There's this saying of the 5 elements.
你们读书不错，我相信你也背不出50种来，对不对？你只能说类别。
You can only broadly categorize them to different categories. So this is also a special combinations to create this food.
可是呢，在原产地把它叫啥？妈妈。
So what is the original name? It is Mama Jasha. Mama Jada. Why is it called Mama in South America? Because it can nurture human beings. And that's why the people in South America know this, and that's why it's known as Mama Jasta. But Master, why did God give potatoes to the people of South America? So God must locate a place on earth that's suitable. In the past, remember we talked about Machu Picchu? Remember, that is on high altitude. It's about 3,000 meters. Machu Picchu is very high altitude. So for fruits or plants, it is very difficult to grow in high altitude. So they lack water, irrigations. It relies heavily on rains. So if God is successful to cultivate potatoes in high altitude, then you'll be able to cultivate all other parts of the world. Also, the environment there is harsh. So they did some research to make sure that it can be cultivated there. So they picked Peru because it served as a cultivation base. So that is really a cultivation base. And it's easy to communicate with God, and it is easy for God to be present. And that's why it's a little bit like a scientific research center for God, especially in the agricultural aspect. So, Master, I have another question. Are other foods also given to us by God? Broadly speaking, if you look at Western religions, all things created by God. But there's a period. So when the earth is created, they already have those food. But I feel that potato was given to us by God at the later part. Potatoes is a combination of vegetables, of food, as well as fruits. In the past, the fruit itself has a yin and a yang elements. But potatoes came later, and they transcend the yin and yang. So when the earth was created, many plants were paired with the world. Almost all flora and fauna on earth are complementary. But potatoes came later, so it transcends the yin and the yang. Potato is both yin and yang. And that's why it's widely adaptable capable of
今天总结
sexual
真
reproductions.
的是神赐的食物，神赐的礼物啊哈，让我们地球人这么繁荣哈。
对，
太好了
So indeed, it
也
is
是土豆
a
的
God-given
神灵
food.
对，土豆的
And
到
a
来对
significant
地球上的
portions of
人口也
population
是
growth
应该是有不断
is
地在增
attributed
长，是
to
吧？
potatoes.
嗯，
And
这个
eating
不会的
potatoes
吃这个
brings
土豆啊
happiness.
对，所以就是人会有那个幸福感。
And that's why eating potatoes for
促进了
lifetimes,
人类整个
it
这个
means
繁
a
衍的发展
lifetimes of happiness.
但是人口再暴增呢，其实种土豆也不行。虽然很高产，但是人太多
But
嘛。
although the
也是
potato
承
has
受不了。
very high yield,
大家懂得
but
这个
if we're
观
going to
念。
have another population explosions, potato will not be enough to feed
所以呢，
不讲解，
the higher level
这
of
个吃一
populations.
辈子土豆呢，就幸福一辈子。
So eating potatoes for a lifetimes
所以
means
大
a
家呢经常
lifetime
吃
of
土豆
happiness.
但
So
是
when
任
you
何
have
东西
time,
呢都不
eat
可以
some
过
potatoes.
太过
But
分了
everything you
啊
must
也会
eat
可能
in
出现相反的
moderations.
作用。
Otherwise,
恰当
you
适
may
当
have
地吃
adverse effect.
比较好。
好的，感恩师傅。
Thank you, Master.
师傅右手边呢有一尊就是特别
Master
庄
on the
严的
right,
这个绿豆母的
there
雕
is a
像
green Tara
我
statue.
想请给大家给网友们介绍一下，我们好久
Master
也没有
can
听到
introduce
师傅
this
讲
Dharma
这些法
treasure.
宝了。
对，
咱们这从土豆跳跃过来有点儿有点儿快啊。
对，这都是神嘛。
好，
哎，对我们这尊神呢，其实是
So
观
this
世音菩萨
is
的化
actually
身之一。
Guanyin Bodhisattvas, a
它呢
manifestation.
呈现的是一个女性的一个神灵的
It
一
is
个
a
外表
female
啊
deities.
对，这个时候女性的这个代表呢，就是其中有一种就是母亲的，
So one of the feelings is
对
like
像
a
母
mother.
亲爱护她的孩
It's
子
like
哈
mother
那真
loving
的
the
舍命
children.
护子啊，舍命爱子哈，用
They are
也就是把
able
最好的都留给孩子，
to
这
give
就是
love
母亲的伟大。
unconditionally.
对，所以呢，观
That's
世音菩
motherly
萨呢
love.
他的内心呢就爱护众生啊。
So
就像
Guanyin
妈妈
Bodhisattvas, the
爱护
love
孩
for
子一般
mankind
那
is
样
like
的
how a
永远
mother
地带
loved
有
the
那种
child.
真诚啊，爱心
It
啊
is filled
那
with
无怨无悔啊，啊，永远把最好的
unconditional
留给我
love.
们。哎，所以呢，你从怀孕的时候就怕你发育不好，
So like the
长不
mother
好身体
from
不健康
pregnancy
头脑不
to
智慧
delivery
等等的，对不对？再从读书开始，又怕
To
调皮
educations,
又怕太愚钝，
to
是
growth,
吧？总是把最好的
the
那个
moms
知识
always
灌输给
give
我
the
们
best
对不对？
to
最
the
后再教
child.
我们怎么样做人，这个
The
好
mom also
人，做
teach
个慈
us
悲善良的人，
how to
是
be
吧
a good
做个
person,
宽宏大量
how
的
to be
人
a kind,
啊，做一个至少有
magnanimous
一技之
person,
长的人，来谋
teach
生
us to
来利国利
develop
民，是吧？
a
利益
skill
自己的
set
家庭，
that can
啊
help
这都
us
是伟大的母亲
to support
啊
ourselves.
她爱我们的那个
These are all
所有的内
signs of
容，我
our
只是说了一点儿啊。
motherly love.
对，所以呢，绿度母呢，
And
那
thus, Green
它呈现
Tara,
的这个像呢，就是这样一个
this
啊
image
慈
of
悲
her
温柔的
represents
宽厚的母亲的
compassion,
形象哈。
represents
那么这个
kindness
做工啊，非常的神奇哈。对，
of
你
a
看
mother.
这个头冠
Look
上
at the
帽冠
workmanship.
帽冠是午夜冠哈，哎，上头呢，
Look at
首先它
the
主要的
crown.
材料是铜啊，
The main components
那是镂
is
空
bronze.
雕刻，
It
一
is
层叠一
carved
层啊
layers
非
by
常的密
layers.
集哈。就
And the
从它的
carving in
工艺
itself
艺术角度来说的
is
话
very refined.
啊，一尊艺术的精品。
If you look at it from an art
精美
perspective,
绝伦的。
对，
it
就是
is a
在
finely
精美的
carved
金属上
art
铸
piece.
造出来之后，打磨的如此的光滑，
And
它的肌肤就像真人的肌肤，比真人肌肤
Even
还
the
要
skin,
光滑细
it
腻
is so refined
所以你看它的
and beautiful.
头光，还有午夜
So
冠
from
上
the
头
crown,
它是达到3层的镂
there are
空雕
actually
刻
3 layers
并且呢活灵活
of
现，
relief
像的
carving.
宝石，啊，像的
You can
这个
also see semi-precious
有绿
stones.
色的偏蓝绿色的是松石
You have the
啊
turquoise
这个
color.
红色的呢，有珊瑚，
You have turquoise.
有这个
You have corals.
红色的玛瑙，
You also have the red agate.
好美哦！
对，非常的美。
It's
它在
very
这个除了
beautiful.
往上镶上这些宝石之外呢，它用这种錾
In
刻的
addition
方
to
法
this
等它
semi-precious
铸造出来之
stone,
后会在帽子上、衣纹上，还有头光上头，还
You can see that even the robe, the Buddhist robe that she's wearing, where I can touch, you can see the flowers, the petals. These are all hand carved. You can see the light reliefs. And it actually engraved very auspicious signs, symbols, and pictures. And if any one of it is done wrongly, it will not be able to present such a magnificent statues. So the craftsmen need to be a devotees, and during the whole creation process, every day before that, before they do it, they have to shower, and they have to use a cloth to cover the nose and the mouth so that there is no human's breath that touch the statues in the productions of it. So the creations of this is very sacred. If you have a very experienced craftsman, you need at least half a year to carve out, to create this Dharma treasures. And after that, they were gilded with gold. And it's about 30 to 40 centimeters in height. So if we worship this green Tara, what benefits will it bring us? Actually, Guanyin Bodhisattvas has already attained Buddhahood earlier. But in order to reach to a wider crowd, she presents herself and she manifests herself as a Bodhisattva. And it helped the Eastern, it actually helped with the Western Pure Land, the head, Amitabha Buddha. Because a lot of people love Guanyin Bodhisattvas, it likes to maintain these manifestations to help all. So she took on this manifestation like a with an unconditional love. So she's guiding us. So if we worship it at home, we'll receive her blessing and protections in all aspects of life. For example, you will have prosperity, you have enough food on the table, you will be safe. And if your children want to have a good marriage, or if your son wants to have a good marriage, she will fulfill those wishes. If you wish for longevities, that's fine too. If you want to ward off calamities and disasters, she will provide the blessings and protections. If the house is not peaceful, Guanyin Bodhisattvas will be there. The blessings will be there. The Dharma protectors will be there at your house. Wherever her intentions reach, the heavenly God, the heavenly deities will be there. So if there are some negative energies at the home, if you worship the green Tara, your house will be peaceful. Your wishes will be fulfilled. If you wish to be a more auspicious person, or you want to attain greater wealth, you may not achieve like a billionaire level, but you'll be definitely attained enough wealth. It's very easy for Buddhas, for Bodhisattvas to bestow you with wealth and prosperity. We have heard of so many stories before. How many people, after they make certain money, but they make the wrong investments and they lose their wealth. Why? Because they lack enough fortunes. So when Bodhisattvas is there to watch over you, you will have the insight to avoid scammed. You will have the wisdoms to avoid being cheated. So who is the one that guides you? It's Buddha, it's Bodhisattvas that guide you. To be there to guide you from looking at the right partner to buying a good place, a good house, to making the right investment. But we don't encourage you to make unnecessary or uninformed investment. In countries where the legal systems or legal framework is not adequate, when you met with a scammer, you will lose your money. But when you have the Dharma, when you have the Buddhas there, they will guide you. Buddha will guide you. And if your child is not wise, not smart, Buddhas will bless your child with wisdoms, with energy, and with good health. To Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, as long as smart you, your children will achieve greatness. If your wedding is not successful, Buddhas will provide you with some inspirations, and you will have good relationships, and your family will attain harmony. So can you imagine if, let's say, you are in a rocky relationships, but you have this divine mother that will guide you along. Obviously, your relationship will turn to be good, to be harmonious. When you have Guanyin Bodhisattvas, when you worship Guanyin Bodhisattvas, the Guanyin Bodhisattvas will help to cleanse, clear your karma, and you will have good, auspicious energy guiding you and protect you. So the environments that you live in, the surrounding itself, will also be auspicious. Everything around you, in your house surrounding, will be blessed with auspicious energy. When you look at the image of it, you are filled with happiness. And Buddha's, the right leg, is stepping forward. Why? It means that Guanyin Bodhisattvas is all ready to help you when you're in need. So this is a very precious Dharma treasure. So like we talk about, the potatoes is a superfood that's gifted by the gods. We never think of potatoes as an auspicious good, but from going forward, we will treat potatoes as an auspicious food. I just want to introduce some of this. This is pineapples. What does it mean? In dialect, Hokkien, it means prosperity. It means auspiciousness. In Malaysia, the Chinese, during the Chinese New Year, they offer this. They offer the pineapple. And that year, they become prosperity. They attain prosperity. So when you put at home, you will have wealth. You will have auspiciousness. Don't we wish for our family to have auspiciousness? At least we have wealth. Well, if your kids do not learn well, what happens? You need money. You need money to nurture your kids. If you want to buy a house, you need money? Yes, because you want to buy a good location. So that's why you need this pineapple. If you like, you can actually put like some blue tack and put it. You can put it in the house or in the car. So what is this?
这个柿子的寓意来。
What does it mean? What is this
这个柿子
persimmon?
张嘴就来说事事如意，
Some may say
这
that
是个大家都知道。
everybody knows is
那么
auspiciousness.
在中国历史上
Historically,
有一个称呼叫做柿子，
it is
我
also
相信多数人是
means
不太清楚。这个柿子哈，是过去皇帝的儿子和皇帝的兄弟才能封为王，对不
it
对？
is representing the descendants
这个
of
王的
emperor.
接班人，指定的接班人叫做柿子。
所以正好跟这个柿子是同音的。
对，
So it has the
柿子
same
呢，将
sound.
来
pron-
成龙成
as
凤的
this.
人。
So this is for the future to attain greatness is crown prince.
柿子，哎，
给孩子们都要有柿子。
好吧。
So children, you should
看
have
这
this.
颜色就觉得幸福感。
Look at the
对不对
colors.
吉祥的，
对
It is so auspicious.
剔透。
对，再说一点命相学啊，如果你的屁股长出柿子的形状来，
If
你
your
不发
butt
财都很
has
困难
this sa-
饱满圆润，
shaped,
回去拿这个对应一下屁股看。
you will definitely
长个柿子。
attain great wealth.
哎，这个
这是
And
桃
what
子
about this?
啊。
长寿
This
的
is
桃
peach.
话说，这个姓商人，
啊，
陶养
养
人，
人，
对，这个桃子哈，所以过去南极仙翁手里拿了个大蟠
Peach
桃，
itself, there is this longevity deities.
对，
In the arms, it holds on to a huge peach. What does
还
it
有呢
represent?
哎，桃花香，
It represents
有好运气
longevities.
对吧？
Peach
有好
also
人缘
represents
哎
good
所以呢
relationships,
这个供这个
good
桃
fortunes.
啊，你有好人缘。
So you
比
have
如
the
说咱要找
peach.
对象了，说我长得也不错，怎么没有人
You will
来
be
追我
able
呀
to find a good partners.
就是没拿着桃儿
快，来请桃儿。
哎，对。
So
一拿着桃儿
invite this
桃花就
peach
就
home.
来了。啊，当然你可以上网请我那个画那个去年画的
春日桃
哈，
花香。
哎，春日桃花香。啊
I also
有
have
桃
a
关
painting.
键是能高
about
寿
peach
长寿。
对，
So
哎
you
这
should
个吃的是
consider
养人的
inviting
哈
that.
就是桃养人哈。
So
啊
definitely
当然有
this
人
will
对
bring
桃那个毛毛敏
longevities.
感的人就少吃哈。
But some
不敏
people,
感
they are
的这个
allergic
适当多
to
吃点儿
the
会让你
skin
健
of
康
peach.
长寿哎，所以
But otherwise,
就
if
是
you are no
好运
allergy,
气好
you
人
should
缘
try to eat more peach
看
because it can bring you
孙悟空吃的那个
longevities.
仙桃那都长生不老，
长生不老啊，
对
那真是哈。对对对，子孙兴旺呢，请着小香炉。
And if you
更好
want
啊
prosperity to your
是香炉
descendants, you want to invite this incense.
嗯，
对，
事业有成，
纯
You
铜
also
的啊
brings that
还
you
有有钱
have
有势
good
香炉呢，
career
其实啊，就是过去哈，
顶
在2000多年、3000年
About
前时候
2,000,
整
3,000
个
years
中国
ago,
的世界上有一个说法，
in ancient China,
就
there
是
is this
皇帝
saying
成皇帝者
that for the
9个鼎
emperor, they need to
啊
have
叫
9
9鼎8簋，
九鼎之尊嘛，叫
九鼎八簋，大家这个更
Nine
更
huge
内行一些哈
incense
那个簋呢是香炉，九鼎八簋。
哦，
啊，鬼不是人鬼情未了的鬼，这个鬼类似香炉的这样一个东西，
So that itself
这个东西呢
represents
其实就是那个鼎的一个缩写了。啊，最后把鼎
it
和
is
鬼
like
两个
a
东西合二
incense,
为
a
一
huge
成为
incense.
了香炉。所以呢，谁家如果有9个香炉，
So whoever house that has 9 of this,
有钱有
what
势
does
做
it mean?
王了，
哎，就是一个至少也可以大展宏图的这样一
It
个，
represents that you will
鸿
have
鹄之志
successful
是吧
career.
将来成为有权有钱的
You will have
一
be
个
a
高人
person of high
是这个意
significance.
思
对，事业有成，
没错了
Successful
它是这个
career
意义第二个
and
呢
gaining
兴盛
great fortunes.
啊，事业兴盛旺盛。第三个就是子孙旺盛，
And also it represents
火星
strong
水火相
descendants.
传呐
对，薪火相传。你不管多能干，如果对更满意的话呢，有后人接
No
班
matter how
继续
good you
传承
are, if you
你可能
have
干得更有
offsprings
劲
that are
头
also
有
successful
盼头
and good,
那香火
then
鼎盛
it means
是
that
后
your
继有人呐
descendants
哎
will be
有这个
able
哈有这个寓意哈。
to continue
这
your
也是个
good
聚宝盆
effort. On top of that,
所以
these
这里是
also
有这么
gather
多的讲
wealth.
究哈。
These incense
所以呢
burners
不
also
说不
a
知道
way
啊
to
大
gather
家
wealth.
说了就知道了哈。哎，这还有个
And I
这
also
种彩色
have
的玻璃
another
叫琉
one.
璃哈琉璃
This
南
is
瓜你就看能有什么说法吗
pumpkins.
南瓜
这个
What do you
跟
think
柿子
about
一
these
样
pumpkins?
也得长成这样的屁股，
我觉得你开悟了哈。
丰收。
It represents harvest.
其实呢哈，所有的瓜内部有个共同的特征。
Actually, if you think about it, all melons inside,
第一个，
they have a lot of
中国人
seeds.
也经常用它的谐音南。
And Chinese like this.
生南丁。
It represents man.
第二个呢，很多南瓜的颜色
And a lot
哈
of time,
是有点黄
the
色的，
color itself is a little bit
它就像一
yellow.
个大金的黄金的果
It's
实。
like a golden
哎就
fruit.
这样哈，
富贵。
富贵，
It represents
财富，
auspiciousness,
哎多生
wealth
多生贵子，
and you have many
对，是这样。
sons.
知道了哈。
So now you
你看
know
这放那儿
its
这挺好
meaning.
看的。
要男孩儿得有个这个南瓜呀，在
对
家里呀。
要生男孩儿，
If you wish for a
就
son,
最好摆这个东西。
you place
说不定
this at
巧合
home.
哈，这1年之后生出个男宝宝
Maybe
来
a year later you will have
说不定
a
哈。
boy. Maybe. Abundant harvest, a life full of
这几个都介绍一
happiness
下。
and
葡萄
auspiciousness.
葡萄。
And what about
多
this?
福啊，
This
多
is
子多福
grapes.
啊。
Grapes represent a lot of sons, and you have
哎
happiness.
夫妻和睦哈。
It
有
represents
葡萄这个里
harmonious
头呢就含着
relationships
这个幸福、快乐
of
两个人
husbands
和
and
谐哈
wife.
就是
A
这
good
个人际关
partnerships
系
between
最难
husband
弄
and
的就是
wife.
它不和谐，要夫妻和谐，还有朋友的关系和谐。
When you
跟
have
你的人缘好，
harmonious
你就有幸福
relationships
甜
with
蜜
your
的感觉
husband and you have good
是这样哈。
interpersonal
这个也
relationship
是
with your
多子多福。
co-workers and friends, then your happiness index will be really high. Is this
大家家中
beautiful?
又吉祥
Yes.
又美好啊！
When we have this at home,
这个叫啥？
we have auspiciousness and
草莓。
happiness. And what's this?
这个
甜甜蜜蜜啊。
This
就是
is
甜甜蜜蜜，草莓
strawberries
甜甜蜜蜜。要想甜蜜
it
幸福嘛
represents sweetness in marriage, sweetness in relationships.
好了，这个小法物、吉祥物哈，给大家介绍这么多哈。
感恩师傅。
Thank you,
咱
Master.
们接下来说下面的。
So let's talk about
看
our
下一
next
期的我们
live
直播的时
broadcast.
间哈1周以后
It's about
是
it's 1 week
4月13
later.
号晚上6点钟温哥华
April
的
the
时间
13th.
那台北的时间
North
呢
America
是4月14
time
号
is
上午
6
的
p.m.
9点钟。
And Taipei time is April the
我们这个内
14th
容啊，
at 9
先提前
a.m.
公布一下，
好啊
就，是下一场直播内容哈，其实是一个念佛场。
So next
你
live
看前面
broadcast
清明哈，
will
我
be
们为我们的
chanting,
祖上
will be a chanting
啊
class.
祈祷啊，念佛啊。
The
祭
earlier
祀啊
chanting class
那接
was
下
for
来
the
呢
Qingming festival.
哎，我们这个祝福
But
念
now
佛哈，
we're going
这
to
叫
chant for
爱的祝福
blessings.
念佛场。我们总有爱的人嘛，
There are people
这
that
都
we
是在
love,
人世间的爱的人哈。
people that we love that surround
往生的
us,
咱们都已经
as
祝
well
福过了
those
哈
that
祭祀过
have
了
passed on.
哎
We have
比如说
already
妈妈爱你的女儿，爱你的儿子
prayed
是
to
吧
them.
还有爱人哈，夫妻
So
之
now
间
we
的
talk
相
about
爱
love,
还有呢情侣
the
啊
love
没结婚的
between
情侣的相爱
lovers,
啊，还有朋友
between
之间
partners
的友情的爱，是吧？
between husband and
这种呢
wife, and even
我们也
friendships,
想把一个最美好的祝福给他，
and between the mom and
那
the
就是
child.
来参与下一次直播。
So we
在
hope
同一时
to
间的这个念佛，我觉
give
得这是
this
最重
love
要的。
to our loved ones.
你看人生哈，10之8九
So I
哈
encourage you
都
to
是
join
不容
us
易的
during the live
回忆起来都是各种
broadcast.
各样的悲催与苦难。
If you look back to
是吧？
life,
要
you'll
么
find
不
that
健
life
康，
is
要
filled
么
with
没
a lot
钱
of
哈，
ups and
要么
downs.
不生
Some
孩子
people
还
face
生
with
出来还不争
troubles,
气
don't
是吧？
have enough
就
money,
各种
or
让你
they
不满
have
意、不吉祥的事儿
unfilial
多了，
children.
是吧？
So there are
今天
many
社会的陷阱诱惑
unauspicious
也特别多，不
things.
学好的，从这个吸毒的、
So there are a
赌
lot
博
of
的，
people
就
who
算
are
是你生下来
involved
都是
in
健康
drugs
的，智力也健康，
or
身体也健
even
康，
gamble.
还有更多的诱惑，让你变成
There are also a lot of negative desires that may affect you.
将来哈，只要这
So
个孩子
if
喜欢上赌博
This
之后，
child likes
将来啊
to gamble,
没多久倾家荡产，
well, he will lose all his
再往
wealth.
下呢家破人亡。
He will also
再就是
lose
吸
his
毒
family.
不管他吸哪个毒合
If
不
he
合
takes
法，
drugs,
但是
whether is it legal or
败家是
illegal,
必然的，既伤
definitely
自己又败
they will
坏了整个家庭
affect himself and the
是吧？
family.
哎，你还有不吉祥。刚才我说这个人和的问题，对不对？你说和谐，有很多人就是不和谐。明明在恋爱要和谐，你才能结婚，对不对？那谈着谈着就谈崩了，不和谐。
But there are some
我
people
觉得这
who
都
are
是
in
障
a
碍
difficult
要么就是精
relationships.
神障碍，要就是我们的
I
业力
think
深
that
重
it's because of
本来他
hindrance.
好好的话
Maybe
你为
it's
什
a
么
form
非说
of
错了
mental
把对方得
hindrance.
罪了呢？很多
Why?
要恋爱要结婚，谈崩了谈岔了的，
a lot of
就是关键
people
时候说了一句错话，
they
得罪了人，
are on the
最后呢，
verge
跑了，
of
你怎
getting
么结婚？
married, but the
甚至于结了
relationship
婚要打架要离婚，
ends
为
up
2件小事自己说错，还有想错了，
in separate
最后
ways.
走
Why?
上分手的结果，
Maybe because they said the wrong thing at the wrong time.
是吧？挣钱就不容易了，谁挣
Making
钱都不
money
容易，
is not
对不对？
easy.
但是
Anyone find
不
that
容易。
it's
更
easy
苦
to
的
make
事儿来
money?
了，说省吃俭用啊，
Some
连个新
people,
袜子都舍不得买，
they are very
露着脚趾
thrifty,
头，可是呢，
they
存了
saved
100万块钱哈，被一个骗子
Say the
骗了
person
你1
saved
星
a
期之
million,
后，你把你100万拿出去叫人
but
骗
the
跑了，
person met a scammer.
现在太多了。
And
骗子
within 1
一
week,
夜能愁白
he
头
lost his
对
entire saving. He lost his 1
还有年轻人被
million.
骗走去当骗子的。
Now it's very
多
common.
惨呐！
Scams are everywhere.
各种的痛苦，各种的陷阱，各种的
So
煎
there are
熬，
many
各种的
such
悲伤，各种的这种愤怒和难过哈，我们就不如
situations that
用
we
另外
may
一个方
face.
法来弥补它。啊，甚至很多家长留很多钱，说我要为了孩子，
Some parents
我努力
may leave
工
a
作
lot of
我给他
money
留一大笔钱
for their
你就不
children.
如让他有个好运气。
Actually, that's
所以
not
如果
as
你有
important
爱的
as
人
having good
给他最
fortune
美
for the
好的
kids.
礼物和祝福的话，
And if you
那
can
么
give the best love
咱们下一场直播哈，亚洲
to your
是
children, isn't that
周
good?
几啊？
周日
Isn't that
周
better?
日的早上
So
9
when
点
is our
早
next
上
live
4月
broadcast?
14号，
对
北美是周六
It's
的晚
April
上
the
温哥华西
13th,
岸时
6
间6 点
p.m.
钟
你赶快来跟着念佛
Vancouver time,
甚至是带着
or
孩子和
April
朋友一起来
14th,
念佛
9
哈
a.m.
对，
Taipei
给
time.
你最爱的那
Come
一个
and
人
chant.
或者那几位
Chant with your
啊这
family.
个最深深的
Chant
祝
with your
福
child.
把佛菩萨赐的这个吉祥哈，
And you want to
送给
bring
你的
this
朋友
auspiciousness
我觉
to
得
your loved
比
one.
送给他财富
I
更
think this
重
is a
要
better gift
对不对？让他出入平安，事事如意，
so that they can have
是吧？健康、快乐
health,
寿比南
happiness,
山
peace,
这个
longevities
财富充裕
and they also
大富
have
大
wealth
贵
and prosperity.
还有呢，这个婚姻美满，
They will have
恋爱
good
成功
family,
早
good
点结婚
relationships.
早生贵子，是吧？所以这一切的吉祥都等着
All
大
this
家。
auspiciousness
可是这一
awaits
切的
them.
吉祥，现在给每一个人、每个家庭都带来了无量的困难呐。哎，所以下一场直播呢，
So
就
that's
是大家
the
来参
intent
与
of the
一
next
起
live broadcast.
把爱
And I
献
hope
给你最
all
爱的那
will
个
join
人
the next
我们用
chanting class
我们真
and
诚的
bring
心
the
来
loves
念佛
to our loved
让
ones.
佛菩萨
When we
保佑
chant
你最爱的
sincerely,
人
we
得
will
到这
seek
一切
Buddha's,
无量的
Bodhisattvas'
美好
blessings to our loved ones so that they can
没错，我们
achieve
一起来念佛。
auspiciousness.
那下个礼拜同一天哈，
对
我们一起来念佛哈。
好的，
好，
So
那
see you
今天
next
就到这里
Sunday
吧哈。好，祝大家
and
健
wishing
康快
all
乐，
health,
如意吉
happiness,
祥，
and auspiciousness
夫妻和睦。
and harmonious relationships between couples and
下次直
longevities.
播再见。
See you next week.
symbolize.